Hello, horror lover. Are you ready for a long night of nightmares? Before we begin, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and especially leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because, as I weave through the crowded aisles of the Derry Antique Fair, the smell of musty fabric and aged wood fills my nostrils. It's a scent I've grown to love over the years, a perfume of history and forgotten treasures. My fingers trail along weathered tabletops and ornate picture frames, searching for that one special find that'll make this trip worthwhile. Anything catch your eye, sir? A vendor asks, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes. I shake my head, offering a polite smile. Just browsing, thanks. That's when I see it. Nestled between a tarnished silver candlestick and a stack of yellowed magazines, a porcelain doll stares back at me with glassy blue eyes. Its Victorian-style dress, once probably a vibrant blue, has faded to a soft periwinkle. Golden curls frame a face that's both beautiful and unsettling. I can't explain why, but I'm drawn to it. My feet move of their own accord, carrying me closer to the booth. Ah, I see you've noticed our little treasure, a voice croaks behind me. I turn to find an elderly woman, her skin like crinkled parchment, smiling up at me. Her eyes, magnified behind thick glasses, seem to twinkle with an odd light. It's quite something. I manage, my gaze drawn back to the doll. How much? The old woman chuckles, a dry sound like autumn leaves skittering across pavement. For you, dear, let's say $50. It's more than I'd usually spend on a whim, but something compels me to reach for my wallet. As I hand over the cash, a chill runs down my spine. Must be a draft in here, I think, trying to shake off the sudden unease. The woman's gnarled fingers brush against mine as she takes the money. A word of advice, young man, she says, her voice dropping to a whisper. Treat her with respect. She doesn't take kindly to being ignored. I force a laugh, trying to play off her cryptic warning as the ramblings of an eccentric old lady. Right, of course. I'll, keep that in mind. As I pick up the doll, its weight surprises me. It's heavier than it looks, solid and substantial in my hands. For a moment, I swear I feel a faint pulse, like a heartbeat, but I dismiss it as my own pulse in my fingertips. Thank you, I say to the old woman, but when I look up, she's gone, vanished into the crowd as if she'd never been there at all. Cradling my new acquisition, I make my way towards the exit. The fair seems different now, shadows deeper, voices more muffled. I shake my head, telling myself I'm being ridiculous. In the parking lot, I carefully place the doll in the backseat of my car. As I slide into the driver's seat, I catch a glimpse of it in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I could swear its head had turned towards me, but when I whip around to look, it's sitting exactly as I left it. Get a grip, I mutter to myself, starting the engine. The drive home is uneventful, but I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every few minutes, my eyes flick to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the doll moved or changed. It remains stubbornly still, yet the unease persists. About halfway home, I hear it. A giggle, high-pitched and childlike, coming from the back seat. I nearly swerve off the road, my heart pounding. I pull over, hands shaking as I turn to look. The doll sits innocently in the exact same spot, its painted smile unchanged. You're losing it, I tell myself, running a hand through my hair. It's just road noise or something from outside. But as I pull back onto the road, I can't help but notice how quiet it is. No other cars, no wind, no birds. Just the hum of my engine and the faint sound of my own breathing. By the time I pull into my driveway, the sun is setting, casting long shadows across my front lawn. I grab the doll, holding it at arm's length as I fumble with my keys. Inside, I head straight for my bedroom, eager to set the thing down and distance myself from it. I place it on a shelf across from my bed, arranging it so it faces the wall. As I step back, a floorboard creaks under my foot, and I swear I see the doll's head twitch slightly. Okay, that's enough, I say aloud, trying to inject some confidence into my voice. You're just a doll. A weird, creepy doll, but just a doll. I turn my back on it, determined to ignore the prickle of unease between my shoulder blades. As I change for bed, I steadfastly avoid looking at the shelf, even though I can feel those glass eyes boring into me. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. I toss and turn, plagued by half-formed nightmares of tiny porcelain hands and high-pitched laughter. Every creak of the house settling makes me jolt awake, my eyes automatically darting to the shelf where the doll sits. Except in the dim light filtering through my curtains, I can see that the shelf is empty. My breath catches in my throat as I sit up slowly, scanning the room. There, at the foot of my bed, sits the doll. Its head is tilted up, those glassy eyes fixed on my face, its smile seeming wider and more malevolent in the shadows. I want to scream, to run, to throw the thing out the window. But I'm frozen, my body refusing to obey as terror courses through me. The doll's mouth opens, a black void in its porcelain face. "Hello, new friend," it says in a voice like splintering wood. "Let's play." I squeeze my eyes shut, willing this to be another nightmare. When I open them again, sunlight is streaming through my window, and the doll is back on the shelf, facing the wall, just as I'd left it. My heart is still racing as I stumble out of bed, approaching the shelf cautiously. The doll doesn't move, doesn't speak. It's just a doll, sitting innocently among my books and knickknacks. It was just a dream, I say aloud, trying to convince myself. Just a stupid nightmare brought on by too much junk food and a creepy doll. But as I turn to head to the bathroom, I catch a glimpse of something in the mirror that makes my blood run cold. There, reflected in the glass, I see the doll on the shelf. And it's turned to face me, that painted smile now a menacing grin. I spin around, but the doll is facing the wall again. Slowly, hesitantly, I look back at the mirror. The reflection shows the doll facing forward, its eyes locked on mine. "What the hell did I bring into my house?" I whisper, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. As if in answer, I hear that same high-pitched giggle from my dream, echoing through the empty house. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that my nightmare is only beginning. The darkness of my bedroom presses in on me as I jolt awake, my heart pounding like a jackhammer against my ribs. Sweat plasters my t-shirt to my skin, and I can feel it trickling down my spine. The echo of low, childlike laughter fades away, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by my ragged breathing. "Just a dream," I mutter to myself, trying to slow my racing pulse. It was just a dream. But as my eyes adjust to the dim light filtering through my curtains, a chill runs through me that has nothing to do with sweat-dampened sheets. There, at the foot of my bed, is a small, shadowy figure. The doll. I blink hard, certain I must still be dreaming. But when I open my eyes, it's still there, its porcelain face gleaming faintly in the darkness. "This isn't real," I say aloud, my voice trembling. "You're on the shelf. You're just a doll." As if in response, I hear that low laughter again, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I clap my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. "Wake up, wake up, wake up," I chant, rocking slightly. When I finally gather the courage to look again, the doll is gone. The foot of my bed is empty, the shadows still and lifeless. I let out a shaky breath, trying to convince myself it was all just a vivid nightmare. "Okay," I say to the empty room. "Okay, it's fine. Everything's fine." I lie back down, pulling the covers up to my chin like a child hiding from monsters. Sleep seems impossible, but eventually, exhaustion wins out over fear, and I drift off into a fitful slumber. The next thing I know, sunlight is streaming through my window and birds are chirping outside. For a moment, the terror of the night feels distant, like a half-remembered bad dream. Then I see the shelf. The doll is back in its place, just where I left it yesterday. But something's off. Its pose has changed ever so slightly. Where before it had been facing the wall, now it's angled towards my bed. its glassy eyes seeming to stare right at me. "No," I whisper, shaking my head. "No, no, no." I approach the shelf cautiously, half expecting the doll to turn its head and look at me. But it remains motionless, just a toy. A creepy, unsettling toy, but a toy nonetheless. I reach out a trembling hand to touch it, and as my fingers brush its cool porcelain cheek, I swear I feel it twitch. I snatch my hand back with a yelp, stumbling away from the shelf. "This isn't happening," I say, running my hands through my hair. "I'm losing my mind. That's it. I'm just going crazy." But deep down, I know that's not true. Something is very, very wrong with this doll. I spend the rest of the morning avoiding my bedroom, puttering around the kitchen, making coffee and toast I'm too nauseated to eat. Every few minutes, I glance towards the hallway, half expecting to see the doll standing there, watching me. Finally, I can't take it anymore. I need answers. I fire up my laptop, my fingers flying over the keys as I search for any information about the doll, its style, its maker, anything that might give me a clue about its history. Hours pass and I find myself tumbling down a rabbit hole of antique doll forums and paranormal websites. Most of it is useless. Collectors arguing over the finer points of bisque versus porcelain. Ghost hunters sharing blurry photos of haunted dolls that look nothing like mine. But then, buried in an old message board thread, I find something that makes my blood run cold. User Haunted Collector 1985 wrote, "Be careful with Victorian-era dolls, especially if they have blue eyes and blonde hair. There are stories, old stories about a doll maker who trapped children's souls in his creations. They say the dolls move at night seeking new bodies to possess. If you have one, get rid of it. Now." The post is followed by a string of replies calling the user crazy or asking for more details, but Haunted Collector 1985 never responded. "It's just a story," I tell myself, even as goosebumps rise on my arms. "Just an urban legend." But I can't shake the memory of the doll at the foot of my bed, of that childlike laughter echoing in the dark. I dig deeper, searching for any concrete information about the doll's origins. But every lead I follow ends in frustration. The maker's mark on the doll's neck doesn't match any known doll maker. The style of dress is a mishmash of different eras, making it impossible to date accurately. It's as if the doll simply appeared out of nowhere, with no history, no provenance. As the day wears on, I find myself jumping at every little sound. The settling of the house, the wind rattling the windows. Each time I expect to turn around and find the doll standing there, its painted smile hiding untold horrors. By the time evening rolls around, I'm a nervous wreck. The thought of spending another night in the house with that thing fills me with dread. "This is ridiculous," I say aloud, pacing my living room. "It's just a doll, an inanimate object. It can't hurt you." But even as I say the words, I don't believe them. I consider calling a friend, asking to stay the night. But what would I say? "Hey, I bought a creepy doll and now I think it's trying to kill me." They'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I have. As night falls, I find myself standing in the doorway of my bedroom staring at the doll on the shelf. It hasn't moved since this morning, but I can't shake the feeling that it's watching me, waiting. "All right," I say, squaring my shoulders. "You want to play games? Let's play." I grab my phone and set it up on my dresser, angled to capture both the shelf and my bed. I start a video recording, determined to catch any movement on camera. "There," I say, glaring at the doll. "Try anything now and I'll have proof." I climb into bed, my eyes never leaving the doll. The rational part of my brain tells me I'm being ridiculous, that I'll wake up in the morning to hours of footage of a motionless doll. But another part, a primal part driven by fear and instinct, whispers that I'm in danger. As I lie there in the dark, every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window, sounds like footsteps, like tiny porcelain feet padding across my floor. I don't know when I fall asleep, but I wake with a start, my heart racing. The room is pitch black, and for a moment, I'm disoriented. Then I hear it, that low, childlike laughter, closer now than ever before. I fumble for my phone, desperate to turn on the light to see what's happening. But as the screen illuminates, I see something that turns my blood to ice. The shelf is empty. And there, at the foot of my bed, I see a small, pale hand reaching up, grasping at my blanket. "No," I whisper, my voice choked with terror. "Please, no." The laughter grows louder, and as I watch, frozen in horror, a porcelain face appears over the edge of the bed. Those glassy blue eyes, no longer lifeless, gleam with malevolent intelligence. The doll's painted lips part in a wide, unnatural grin. "Let's play," it says in a voice like splintering wood. I scream. The next few nights blur together in a haze of terror and sleeplessness. Each time I drift off, I jerk awake to find the doll in a new, impossible position. One night, it's perched atop my dresser, its glassy eyes gleaming in the moonlight. The next, it's seated in my reading chair, tiny legs crossed as if in quiet contemplation. "This isn't happening," I mutter, rubbing my bleary eyes as I stare at the doll now sitting on my windowsill. "You can't move. You're not real." But the evidence is undeniable. No matter where I place the doll before bed, it never stays put. Desperate for proof, or perhaps validation that I'm not losing my mind, I set up an old camcorder in the corner of my room. The red recording light blinks steadily as I climb into bed, my eyes locked on the doll's motionless form across the room. "Got you now," I whisper, finally drifting off to an uneasy sleep. The next morning I wake to find the doll back on its shelf, looking as innocent as ever. Heart pounding, I rush to the camcorder, eager to review the footage. But as I plug it into my computer, my hopes are dashed. The video file is corrupted, nothing but static and garbled images. I try again the next night, and the next, but the result is always the same. It's as if the doll is taunting me, always one step ahead. As the days wear on, the strange occurrences escalate beyond my bedroom. I'm in the kitchen making coffee when I hear a loud crash from the living room. I rush in to find a vase shattered on the floor, its flowers strewn about. "How?" I begin, but my words trail off as I spot the doll seated on the coffee table, its painted smile seeming wider than ever. Doors begin to slam shut of their own accord. Books fly off shelves. The television turns itself on and off, always tuned to static. And through it all, that high, childlike laughter echoes through the house. I try to get rid of the doll. I drive miles out of town and dump it in a ditch. I leave it in a donation bin at the local thrift store. I even try to burn it, but the flames won't catch. Each time I return home to find the doll waiting for me, unscathed and unmoved. "Why won't you leave me alone?" I scream at it one night, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. "What do you want from me?" The doll, of course, doesn't answer, but that night, I wake to find it sitting on my chest, its cold porcelain hands pressed against my throat. My friends are starting to notice something's wrong. I've been canceling plans, showing up to work with dark circles under my eyes. When I do see them, I'm distracted, constantly glancing over my shoulder as if expecting to see a tiny figure lurking nearby. "Hey, are you okay?" my friend Sarah asks over coffee one afternoon. "You seem, I don't know, on edge." I consider telling her everything, about the doll, the sleepless nights, the terror that's become my constant companion. But the words stick in my throat. "I'm fine," I lie, forcing a smile. "Just been having some trouble sleeping lately." Sarah frowns, unconvinced. "Is this about that doll you bought? The one you keep talking about?" I freeze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "What do you mean?" "Well, it's just, you've been mentioning it a lot, asking if we've seen it move, if we've heard anything about haunted dolls. It's kind of freaking us out, to be honest." I set my cup down, my hands shaking slightly. I didn't realize I was talking about it so much." Sarah reaches across the table, her hand warm on mine. "We're worried about you. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist, maybe." For a moment, I'm tempted to pour out everything, to beg for help, but I can already see the doubt in Sarah's eyes, the concern that's edging towards fear. Not of the doll, but of me and my apparent descent into madness. "You're right," I say instead, plastering on another fake smile. "I've just been working too hard. I'll try to get more rest." But rest is the last thing on my mind as I return home that evening. The house feels different somehow, the air thick and oppressive. As I step into the living room, my blood runs cold. Every photograph, every painting, every reflective surface in the room has been turned to face the wall. And there, in the center of it all, sits the doll. "No more games," I say, my voice shaking despite my attempt at bravery. "This ends now." I grab the doll, its porcelain body unnaturally warm in my hands, and storm towards the front door. I'm going to drive until I find a lake, a river, somewhere I can sink this cursed thing once and for all. But as I reach for the doorknob, I hear it again, that soft, childlike laughter. It's coming from the doll in my hands. Slowly, terrifyingly, the doll's head turns. Its glassy eyes meet mine, and its painted lips part. "You can't get rid of me," it says in a voice like cracking ice. "I'm part of you now," I scream, dropping the doll. It hits the floor with a thud, rolling to a stop at my feet. When I look down, it's motionless once more, just a doll. But I know the truth now. This isn't just a haunted object, some spirit attached to an antique. This is something far worse, something that's latched onto me. As I sink to the floor, my back against the door, I realize with dawning horror that my nightmare is far from over. It's only just beginning. The doll sits there, silent and still, but I can feel its presence in my mind, a shadow lurking at the edges of my consciousness. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that no matter where I go, no matter what I do, I'll never truly be free of it. The sun sets outside my window, plunging the room into shadows, and in the growing darkness I swear I see the doll's smile widen, just a fraction. The night stretches before me, long and terrifying. And somewhere in the house I hear a door slowly begin to creak open. The glow of my laptop screen illuminates my haggard face as I hunch over the keyboard, my eyes burning from hours of intense research. Coffee cups litter my desk, testament to my desperate attempts to stay awake, to avoid the nightmares that await me in sleep. The doll sits in the corner of the room, its presence a constant, malevolent weight on my psyche. There has to be something, I mutter, scrolling through yet another archive of antique doll collectors' forums. Some explanation, some way to end this. As dawn breaks, my relentless searching finally yields a promising lead. An obscure blog post mentions a series of unexplained deaths in the 1950s, all linked to a single antique doll passing from owner to owner. The description matches my doll perfectly. My heart races as I dive deeper, following the trail of breadcrumbs through decades of newspaper archives and local history records. Each discovery chills me more than the last. 1953. A young couple found dead in their home, expressions of terror frozen on their faces. The only item missing, an antique doll from their collection. 1967. A reclusive collector dies under mysterious circumstances. Neighbors report hearing childlike laughter from the empty house for weeks afterward. 1982. An entire family vanishes without a trace. The only clue left behind is a porcelain doll, found sitting at their meticulously set dinner table. With trembling hands, I print out the articles, spreading them across my desk. The pattern is undeniable, a trail of tragedy following the doll through the years. But how did it end up at that antique fair? And why did it choose me? As if sensing my thoughts, I hear a soft scraping sound from the corner. I whirl around to see the doll has moved, now facing me directly, its glassy eyes reflecting the early morning light. "What are you?" I whisper, my voice hoarse with fear and lack of sleep. The doll, of course, doesn't answer, but its painted smile seems to widen just a fraction. Shuddering, I turn back to my research. I need help, I realize. Someone who might understand what I'm dealing with, who won't think I'm losing my mind. After another hour of searching, I find a website for a local paranormal investigator. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the site proclaims, specializes in haunted objects and malevolent spirits. It's a long shot, but at this point, I'm willing to try anything. With shaking fingers, I dial the number listed on the website. Dr. Vance's office. A crisp voice answers. I need help, I stammer. It's about a doll. A haunted doll. Please, you have to believe me. There's a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I'm certain she's going to hang up. But then she speaks, her voice softening slightly. Tell me everything, she says. The words pour out of me in a frantic rush. The antique fair, the nights of terror, the moving doll, the corrupted videos, the trail of deaths I've uncovered. Through it all, Dr. Vance listens silently. I see, she says when I finally run out of words. This is concerning. I'll come to examine the doll this afternoon, but I must warn you, if what you're saying is true, we may be dealing with something very dangerous indeed. Relief floods through me. Thank you, I breathe. Thank you so much. As I hang up, I turn to look at the doll. For a split second, I swear I see a flicker of something like fear in its glassy eyes. But then it's gone, and it's just a doll again, silent and still. The hours until Dr. Vance's arrival crawl by with agonizing slowness. I pace the house, jumping at every creak and groan. The doll remains motionless, but I can feel its presence like a weight on my chest, growing heavier with each passing minute. Finally, the doorbell rings. I rush to answer it, finding a tall, stern-looking woman with steel-gray hair on my doorstep. She carries a large leather bag and wears an expression of guarded curiosity. Dr. Vance? I ask. She nods. And you must be the one with the doll. May I come in? I lead her to the living room, where the doll sits in its corner. Dr. Vance approaches it slowly, her eyes narrowing as she examines it from every angle. Fascinating, she murmurs. The craftsmanship is exquisite, but there's something off about it. Something not quite right. She reaches into her bag, pulling out various instruments, EMF meters, thermal cameras, dowsing rods. For the next hour, she meticulously examines the doll and the surrounding area, taking notes and muttering to herself. I hover nearby, desperate for answers. Well, I ask as she straightens up, what is it? What's wrong with the doll? Dr. Vance turns to me, her face pale. In all my years of investigating, I've never encountered anything quite like this. The energy surrounding this doll is malevolent, ancient, and hungry. A chill runs down my spine. Hungry for what? She meets my eyes, her gaze heavy with concern. Souls, I believe. It feeds on human souls, trapping them within itself. The more it consumes, the stronger it becomes. As if on cue, a low childlike laugh echoes through the room. Dr. Vance whirls around, her eyes wide with fear. The doll is standing now, its porcelain limbs moving with unnatural fluidity. Its painted lips part in a wide, terrible grin. Run, Dr. Vance whispers. Run, now. She doesn't need to tell me twice. We bolt for the front door, the sound of pattering footsteps following close behind. As we burst out onto the street, I turn to look back. The doll stands in the doorway, its glassy eyes gleaming with malice. And then, impossibly, it speaks. You can't escape me, it says in a voice like shattering glass. I'll find you. I always do. Dr. Vance grabs my arm, pulling me towards her car. We need to go, she says urgently. It's not safe here. As we speed away, I see the doll in the rearview mirror, growing smaller but no less menacing. Dr. Vance's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. What do we do now? I ask, my voice shaking. She shakes her head. I don't know. I can't. She takes a deep breath. I need time to research, to consult with colleagues. This is beyond anything I've ever encountered. We drive in silence for a while, the weight of our encounter hanging heavy between us. Finally, Dr. Vance drops me off at a motel on the outskirts of town. "Stay here," she says. "I'll be in touch once I know more. And whatever you do, don't go back to that house." As she drives away, I check into the motel, collapsing onto the bed in exhaustion. Despite my fear, sleep claims me almost instantly, but my rest is far from peaceful. In my dreams, I see them, the doll's previous victims. Their faces swim before me, contorted in eternal agony. They reach out with spectral hands, their mouths open in silent screams. A small girl with pigtails, her eyes wide with terror. An old man, his face lined with decades of torment. The young couple from the 1953 article, forever frozen in their moment of death. And behind them all, growing larger and more monstrous with each soul it consumes, looms the doll. Its laughter echoes through the dreamscape, a promise of horrors yet to come. I jolt awake, drenched in sweat, the echoes of that terrible laughter still ringing in my ears. And as my eyes adjust to the darkness of the motel room, my heart stops. There, on the dresser across from my bed, sits a familiar porcelain figure, its painted smile wider than ever. "Found you," it says. The clock on my nightstand blinks 3 a.m., the witching hour. The motel room is bathed in an eerie, pale light from the street lamp outside. I've been staring at the doll for hours, watching, waiting. My nerves are frayed, my body tense with anticipation and fear. "Enough," I whisper, my voice hoarse. "No more games, no more running." I swing my legs off the bed, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. The doll sits motionless on the dresser, its glassy eyes reflecting the dim light. But I know better now. I know it's watching me. Always watching. "What do you want?" I demand, my voice growing stronger. "Why are you doing this to me?" Silence. The doll remains still, its painted smile mocking me. I take a step closer, anger beginning to override my fear. "Answer me. You can move, you can speak. I know you can. So talk to me, damn you." For a moment, nothing happens. Then, slowly, terrifyingly, the doll's head begins to turn. The movement is unnatural, jerky, like a marionette controlled by an unseen hand. Its head swivels until those glassy eyes are fixed directly on me. The painted lips curl upward, the smile growing wider, impossibly wide, and then it speaks. "Hello, my pet," it says, its voice a horrifying mixture of child and ancient evil. "Are you ready to play?" I stumble backward, my heart pounding so hard I fear it might burst from my chest. What are you?" The doll's head tilts to one side, a parody of curiosity. "I am hunger. I am the void. I am the thing that waits in the dark, feeding on fear and suffering." Its porcelain limbs begin to move, joints creaking as it stands. "And you, my dear, are my newest toy." Terror overwhelms me. I turn and run, not bothering with shoes or keys. I burst out of the motel room, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. Behind me, I hear that high, childlike laughter. I run until my lungs burn, until the motel is far behind me. Finally, I collapse against my car, fumbling in my pockets for the keys I suddenly remember grabbing out of habit. As I slump into the driver's seat, I glance at the motel. No sign of pursuit. No tiny figure in the shadows. Maybe, just maybe, I'm safe for now. I spend the rest of the night in my car, parked in a 24-hour supermarket lot. Every passing shadow makes me flinch, every distant laugh sends my heart racing. But as dawn breaks, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I begin to relax. I've made it through the night. "It's over," I mutter, rubbing my tired eyes. "It can't follow me here." But as I turn to check the back seat, my words die in my throat. There in the passenger seat sits the doll. Its head is turned towards me, that terrible smile still in place. "Did you really think you could escape me?" it asks, its voice filled with cruel amusement. I scream, fumbling with the door handle. I tumble out onto the asphalt, scraping my palms and knees. Ignoring the startled looks from early morning shoppers, I run once again. I don't stop running until I find myself in an unfamiliar part of town. My feet are bleeding, my lungs on fire, but the terror keeps me moving. As I lean against a lamppost, trying to catch my breath, my eye catches a neon sign in a nearby storefront window. Madame Zora's psychic readings, it proclaims in flickering purple letters. Under normal circumstances, I'd scoff at such a thing. But these are far from normal circumstances. And right now, I'm willing to try anything. The bell above the door jingles as I enter. The interior is dimly lit, heavy with the scent of incense. Beaded curtains separate the front room from what I assume is the reading area. "Hello?" I call out, my voice shaking. "Is anyone here?" The beaded curtains part, and a woman emerges. She's younger than I expected, maybe in her 30s, with dark hair and eyes that seem to look right through me. "You are troubled," she says, her voice soft but firm. It's not a question. I nod, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "Please," I whisper. "I need help." She gestures for me to follow her into the back room. As I sink into a plush armchair, she takes a seat across from me, her eyes never leaving my face. "Tell me," she says simply. And so I do. I pour out the whole terrifying tale, the antique fair, the nights of terror, Dr. Vance's visit, the confrontation in the motel. Through it all, Madame Zora listens silently, her expression grave. When I finish, she's quiet for a long moment. Then she reaches out, taking my hands in hers. I flinch at first, but her touch is warm, comforting. "What you face," she says slowly, "is no ordinary spirit or haunting. The entity bound to that doll is ancient, malevolent, a thing that should not be in this world." "What is it?" I ask, dreading the answer. Madame Zora's grip on my hands tightens. It has many names in many cultures, demon, jinn, yokai, but names have power, and to speak its true name would be to invite its attention. She leans closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It is a parasite, feeding on human fear and suffering. It latches onto a host, in this case the doll, and uses it to terrorize its victims. The more fear it creates, the stronger it becomes." A chill runs down my spine. How do I stop it?" Madame Zora's eyes are filled with sympathy and something else. Fear. Stopping such an entity is no easy task. It requires great power, great sacrifice. "I'll do anything," I say desperately. "Please, just tell me how to end this nightmare." She pulls away, standing abruptly. "There may be a way, but it is dangerous, and the price is high." Before she can elaborate, a cold wind sweeps through the room, extinguishing the candles. The temperature drops, and I can see my breath misting in the air. And then I hear it. That familiar, terrible laugh. "Did you really think a fortune teller could save you?" The doll's voice echoes from everywhere and nowhere. Madame Zora's face goes pale. "It's here," she whispers. The beaded curtains rattle, and there it is. The doll stands in the doorway, its porcelain face twisted into a grotesque parody of a smile. My, it says, its head tilting to one side. "What a delicious snack you've brought me." Madame Zora steps in front of me, her hands raised. "Begone, foul thing. You have no power here." The doll's laughter grows louder, more menacing. "Power? Oh, you foolish woman, I have all the power here." Its glassy eyes begin to glow with an otherworldly light. The room starts to shake, objects flying off shelves. "Run!" Madame Zora shouts, pushing me towards the back door. "Run and don't look back." As I burst out into the alley behind the shop, I hear Madame Zora's scream cut short. The sound of breaking glass and splintering wood follows me as I run, the doll's laughter echoing in my ears. I run until my legs give out, collapsing in a park miles from the psychic's shop. As I lie there, gasping for breath, the full weight of what's happening crashes down on me. This isn't just a haunted doll. It's not even just a malevolent spirit. This is something ancient, something evil beyond comprehension, and it's fixated on me. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the park, I curl into a ball, shaking with exhaustion and fear. I know I should keep running, but where can I go? How can I escape something that always finds me? In the gathering darkness, I hear the soft patter of tiny footsteps on grass. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that my nightmare is far from over. It's only just beginning. The musty scent of old books fills my nostrils as I pore over the ancient tome Madame Zora had thrust into my hands before the doll found us. Her last words echo in my mind. The ritual. It's the only way. My fingers tremble as I trace the faded script, deciphering the arcane instructions for the banishment ritual. Candles, salt, herbs I've never heard of. The list seems endless. But I'm beyond caring about the difficulty or the danger. I just want this nightmare to end. You can't get rid of me that easily, the doll's voice whispers from the darkened corner of my living room. I refuse to look, keeping my eyes fixed on the book. Watch me, I mutter, my jaw clenched with determination. It takes days to gather all the necessary components. I scour new age shops and herbalists, my desperation growing with each passing hour. The doll's presence is constant, always just at the edge of my vision, its laughter haunting my every step. Finally, as the sun sets on the third day, I'm ready. I've drawn the intricate symbols on my living room floor with chalk, placed candles at each cardinal point, and arranged the herbs and crystals in precise patterns described in the book. Taking a deep breath, I step into the center of the circle. This ends now, I say, my voice stronger than I feel. I begin to chant the words of the ritual, strange syllables that feel heavy on my tongue. At first, nothing happens. Then, slowly, I feel a change in the air. It becomes thick, charged with an otherworldly energy. The house begins to shake, a low rumble that grows in intensity. Picture frames rattle on the walls, books tumble from shelves. A vase shatters, sending shards of pottery skittering across the floor. You dare? The doll's voice booms, no longer childlike but deep and resonant with rage. You dare to challenge me? I squeeze my eyes shut, forcing myself to continue the chant. The words flow faster now, almost of their own accord. The shaking intensifies, and I hear the crash of furniture toppling over. When I open my eyes, I see the doll standing at the edge of the circle. Its glassy eyes are glowing and eerie, blood red. The painted smile has transformed into a snarl of fury. I will destroy you, it hisses, its porcelain face cracking to reveal something dark and writhing beneath. I will consume your soul and leave nothing behind. Fear threatens to choke me, but I push through, my voice rising above the cacophony of destruction around me. The candles flare, their flames stretching impossibly high. The salt line around the circle begins to glow with an inner light. For a moment, I dare to hope. The doll seems to be shrinking, its form wavering like a mirage in the desert. The red glow in its eyes flickers. No, it screams, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. I will not be banished. I am eternal. Its words cut off as I reach the climax of the ritual. I feel power surging through me, ancient and terrible. My voice rises to a shout as I pronounce the final words of banishment. There's a blinding flash of light, and for a split second I think it's worked. The doll seems to be disintegrating, crumbling to dust before my eyes. But then I hear it. Laughter. Soft at first, then growing in volume and malice. Oh, my sweet, naive little mortal. The doll's voice purrs, now seeming to come from everywhere at once. Did you really think it would be that easy? The light fades, and I blink spots from my vision. The doll stands before me, whole and unmarked. Its eyes are no longer glowing, but the malevolence in them is, if anything, more terrifying. You have no idea what you're dealing with, it says, its voice a horrifying mixture of child and demon. I am beyond your pitiful human rituals. I am older than the words you speak, more powerful than you can comprehend. The protective circle shatters like glass, and I feel an icy wind whip around me. The doll takes a step forward, its porcelain feet clicking on the hardwood floor. But I must thank you. It continues, its painted lips curling into a cruel smile. Your little ritual has made me stronger. The fear, the desperation, the hope crushed to dust. Oh, how delicious. I stumble backward, my back hitting the wall. No, I whisper, my voice hoarse from chanting. This can't be happening. The doll's laughter echoes through the room, growing in volume until it's all I can hear. Oh, but it is happening, my pet, and we're only just getting started. With a wave of its tiny hand, the remnants of my ritual are swept away. Candles snuff out, herbs wither and crumble to dust. The ancient tome bursts into flames, curling and blackening in seconds. No more distractions, the doll says, its voice suddenly soft, almost gentle. No more false hope. It's just you and me now, for eternity. I slide down the wall, my legs no longer able to support me. The magnitude of my failure crashes over me like a wave. I had one chance, one possibility of ending this nightmare, and I've not only failed, but made things worse. Why? I managed to choke out. Why me? What do you want? The doll tilts its head, regarding me with something almost like pity. Why does the lion want the gazelle? Why does the storm ravage the coast? I am what I am, and you are my prey. It's as simple as that. It takes a step closer and I flinch. But don't worry, it continues, its voice taking on that sickly sweet childlike tone again. I won't end it quickly. Where's the fun in that? No, we have so many games to play, you and I. So many delightful torments to explore. Tears stream down my face as I realize the full horror of my situation. This isn't just about fear anymore. This is about suffering, drawn out over who knows how long. This entity, this thing masquerading as a doll, intends to break me piece by piece. Please, I whisper, knowing it's futile, but unable to stop myself. Please, just let me go. The doll's laughter is soft now, almost intimate. Oh, my pet. Don't you understand yet? You're already mine. You have been since the moment you laid eyes on me at that fair. Everything since then, the terror, the hope, the desperation, it's all been part of the game. It reaches out, its cold porcelain hand caressing my cheek. I want to recoil, but I'm frozen in place. And now, it says, the real fun begins. As if on cue, the lights in the house flicker and die, plunging us into darkness. I hear the doll's soft footsteps retreating, its laughter fading, but never quite disappearing. I'm left alone in the dark, surrounded by the wreckage of my failed ritual. The weight of my failure, of the horror that awaits me, is almost physical. I curl into a ball, shaking with sobs that rack my entire body. In the distance, a clock chimes midnight. A new day is beginning. But for me, it feels like the end of everything. The doll is out there in the darkness waiting, and I know with a certainty that chills me to my bone that this is only the beginning of my torment. As I lie there, broken and hopeless, I hear the soft patter of porcelain feet approaching once more. And despite everything, despite knowing it's exactly what the entity wants, I feel a scream building in my throat. The game, it seems, is far from over. The harsh glare of morning sunlight filters through my curtains, rousing me from a fitful sleep plagued by nightmares. I groan, my body aching as if I've run a marathon. Slowly, I drag myself out of bed and stumble towards the bathroom, desperate for a hot shower to wash away the lingering tendrils of terror. As I reach for the faucet, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror and freeze. My hair is a tangled mess, my skin pale and drawn from lack of sleep. But that's not what stops me cold. It's my eyes. Where once they were a warm brown, they now gleam an unnatural blue, glassy and lifeless, just like the doll's. No, I whisper, leaning closer to the mirror. This can't be happening. But there's no denying the truth staring back at me. My eyes have changed, become something alien and wrong. Do you like them? The doll's voice whispers in my mind, dripping with malicious glee. I thought they'd suit you. I stumble back from the mirror, my heart pounding. "Get out of my head!" I shout, clutching at my temples. The doll's laughter echoes through my skull. "Oh, my pet, I'm not just in your head anymore. I'm becoming a part of you." Terror grips me as the full implications of its words sink in. This isn't just haunting or torment anymore. The entity is trying to possess me. I spend the morning in a daze, going through the motions of my daily routine while trying to ignore the constant presence in my mind. As I'm pouring my coffee, my hand suddenly jerks, spilling hot liquid across the counter. "Damn it!" I hiss, reaching for a towel. But my arm doesn't respond. Instead, it rises of its own accord, my fingers splaying wide before clenching into a fist. "What's the matter?" The doll's voice taunts. "Feeling a bit out of control?" I watch in horror as my arm moves again, puppet-like, reaching for the knife block on the counter. My fingers close around the handle of a large chef's knife. "Stop it!" I cry out, using every ounce of willpower to fight against the invisible force controlling my limb. "Leave me alone!" For a moment, nothing happens. Then slowly, agonizingly, I manage to release the knife. It clatters to the floor and I collapse against the counter, panting. "Very good." The doll purrs in my mind. "You're stronger than I expected. This will be so much more fun." Throughout the day, these episodes of lost control come and go without warning. At work, I find myself typing gibberish into important reports. During lunch, my fork veers away from my mouth at the last second, splattering food down my shirt. Each time I hear the doll's laughter, feel its cruel amusement at my struggles. By mid-afternoon, my coworkers are giving me concerned looks. Sarah from accounting approaches my desk, her brow furrowed with worry. "Hey, are you feeling okay?" she asks. "You seem off today." I open my mouth to reassure her, to make up some excuse about not sleeping well, but what comes out instead is a high, childlike giggle that sounds nothing like my own voice. Sarah takes a step back, her eyes widening. "What was that?" I don't know." I stammer, horrified. "I'm sorry, I think I might be coming down with something. Maybe I should go home." As I gather my things, I catch Sarah whispering to another coworker, both of them casting furtive glances in my direction. The doll's voice in my head grows louder, more insistent. "They think you're losing your mind," it says gleefully. "Soon, they'll be right." The drive home is a nightmare. Every few minutes, my hands try to jerk the steering wheel, nearly sending me into oncoming traffic. By the time I pull into my driveway, I'm shaking and drenched in sweat. Inside, I slump onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. "Why are you doing this?" I ask aloud, my voice breaking. "What do you want from me?" The doll materializes on the coffee table, its glassy eyes, my eyes now, fixed on me. "I want what I've always wanted," it says, its painted lips curling into a smile. "To exist, to feel, to live." "But you're destroying me in the process," I argue. The doll tilts its head, a mockery of curiosity. "Am I? Or am I setting you free? Imagine it. No more fear, no more pain, no more tedious human concerns. Just pure existence, pure power." For a terrifying moment, I feel a flicker of temptation. To give in, to let go of the constant struggle. But I push it away, clinging to my humanity with desperate determination. "Never," I growl. "I'll never give in to you." The doll's laughter fills the room. "Oh, my sweet, naive little mortal. You don't have a choice." Suddenly, pain explodes behind my eyes. I cry out, doubling over as it feels like my skull is being split in two. Through the haze of agony, I hear the doll's voice, no longer just in my head, but seeming to come from my own mouth. "Your body is mine," it says, using my vocal cords. "Your mind is mine. Soon your very soul will belong to me." I fight against it, struggling to regain control. For a moment, I manage to push the entity back, gasping for air. "Help," I croak, fumbling for my phone. I need to call for help. But as I start to dial, my fingers spasm, dropping the phone. It skitters across the floor, coming to rest at the doll's feet. Now, now, the doll chides. We can't have that. No spoiling our fun. The rest of the evening passes in a nightmarish blur. I lose track of how many times I lose control, how many times I find myself doing things I never intended. At one point, I come to awareness to find myself in the kitchen, surrounded by shattered plates and glasses. As night falls, I drag myself to bed, exhausted beyond measure. But sleep brings no relief. In my dreams, I see myself from the outside, watching as my body moves and speaks, but I'm no longer the one in control. I wake with a start, drenched in sweat. The digital clock on my nightstand reads 3:33 a.m. In the dim light, I see the doll sitting at the foot of my bed, watching me. "Sleep well?" it asks, its voice dripping with false concern. "Please," I whisper, my voice hoarse. "Please, just tell me how to end this. What do I need to do?" The doll's smile widens, revealing teeth that no doll should have. Sharp, gleaming things that belong in the mouth of a predator. "End it? Oh, my pet. We're just getting started." It crawls towards me, its movements jerky yet terrifyingly fluid. As it reaches me, I feel an icy coldness spreading through my body, starting from where its porcelain hand touches my skin. "Soon," it whispers, its face inches from mine. "Soon you'll understand. Soon you'll be free." As the coldness engulfs me, I feel myself slipping away. My last conscious thought is a desperate prayer for help, for salvation, for anyone or anything to save me from this nightmare. But as darkness claims me, all I hear is the doll's laughter, echoing through the chambers of my mind. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that when I wake up, I may no longer be myself. The possession is nearly complete, and I am powerless to stop it. The first rays of dawn filter through my bedroom window, rousing me from a fitful sleep. For a moment I lie still, trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered reality. The events of the past few days swirl in my mind like a nightmarish kaleidoscope. The failed ritual, the loss of control, the terrifying progression of the possession. As consciousness fully takes hold, I'm gripped by a sudden, overwhelming clarity. I can't stay here. I can't keep fighting this losing battle against an entity that grows stronger with each passing hour. I need to run. With shaking hands, I throw some clothes and essentials into a duffel bag. My movements are jerky, uncoordinated. Whether from fear or the entity's influence, I can't tell. As I zip up the bag, my eyes fall on a framed photo of my family. For a moment, I consider taking it, but the thought of tainted this cherished memory with the horror of my current situation is too much to bear. "Leaving so soon?" The doll's voice echoes in my mind, dripping with mock concern. And here I thought we were just getting to know each other. I ignore it, focusing on the task at hand. Keys, wallet, phone. I grab them all, trying to ignore how foreign my own hands look to me now. As I reach for the doorknob, I catch a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My eyes, still that unnatural glassy blue, stare back at me. But there's something else there now, a flicker of determination that gives me hope. "You can't run from me," the doll whispers. "I'm a part of you now. Watch me," I mutter through gritted teeth, wrenching open the door and stepping out into the cool morning air. I throw my bag into the car and slide behind the wheel, my heart pounding. As I back out of the driveway, I allow myself one last look at the house that has become my prison. In the upstairs window, I swear I see a small familiar silhouette watching me leave. The early morning streets are mercifully empty as I drive, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I have no real destination in mind, just away. Away from the house, away from the memories, away from the nightmare my life has become. As I merge onto the highway, a flicker of movement in my rearview mirror catches my eye. My blood runs cold as I see the doll, perched in the back seat, its painted smile wider than ever. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" it asks, its voice now coming from behind me rather than inside my head. I swerve, nearly colliding with a passing truck. Horns blare as I struggle to regain control of the vehicle. "Get out!" I scream, my voice hoarse with terror. "Leave me alone!" The doll's laughter fills the car. "Oh, my pet, don't you understand yet? I'll never leave you alone. We're bound together now, you and I." Panic overwhelms me. I can't think, can't breathe. My eyes dart frantically between the road ahead and the rearview mirror, where the doll sits, motionless yet somehow radiating malevolent glee. I spot an exit coming up and make a split-second decision. Ignoring the blaring horns, I cut across 2 lanes of traffic and take the off-ramp, tires screeching in protest. At the bottom of the ramp, I slam on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt in front of a small bus station. Without stopping to think, I grab my bag and bolt from the car, leaving the keys in the ignition. As I run towards the station, I hear the doll's voice calling after me. "Run all you want," it says. "You'll only die tired." Inside the station, I find a bus about to depart. I don't even look at the destination. Anywhere is better than here. I buy a ticket with shaking hands and board the bus, collapsing into a seat near the back. As the bus pulls away, I allow myself to breathe. Maybe, just maybe, I've managed to escape. I close my eyes, feeling the exhaustion of the past few days catching up with me. But my relief is short-lived. As I open my eyes, I catch sight of my reflection in the bus window. And there, sitting next to me, is the doll. "Miss me?" it asks, its voice now a soft whisper that only I can hear. A strangled sob escapes my throat. An elderly woman across the aisle gives me a concerned look, but I can't bring myself to care. "Why won't you leave me alone?" I whisper, my voice barely audible. The doll tilts its head, regarding me with those glassy eyes. My eyes. "Because you're mine," it says simply. "And I don't let go of what's mine." The bus ride becomes a surreal nightmare. To the other passengers, I must look like any other traveler, albeit one who's seen better days. But in my own private hell, I'm trapped next to an entity that delights in tormenting me. It whispers constantly, a stream of threats and promises that make my skin crawl. Sometimes it speaks with my voice, sometimes with the voice of loved ones. Always, its words are designed to chip away at my sanity. Hours pass. The landscape outside changes from city to suburbs to rolling countryside. I lose track of time, lost in a haze of fear and exhaustion. Finally, as the sun begins to set, the bus pulls into a small town I've never seen before. As we come to a stop, I make another impulsive decision. Grabbing my bag, I stumble off the bus, ignoring the concerned looks from the driver and other passengers. The town is unfamiliar, a maze of quiet streets and closed shops. Night is falling rapidly, casting long shadows that seem to reach for me like grasping fingers. "Where are we going now?" the doll asks, its voice echoing from every shadow. "What's your grand plan?" "Shut up," I mutter, drawing strange looks from a couple walking past. "Just shut up and leave me alone." I wander the streets aimlessly, my feet aching, my mind reeling. Every reflective surface shows me the doll, always just behind me, always watching. In windows and puddles, even in the chrome bumper of a parked car. It's there, smiling its terrible smile. As full darkness descends, I find myself in a small park. Exhausted beyond measure, I collapse onto a bench, burying my face in my hands. "What do you want from me?" I ask, my voice breaking. "Why are you doing this?" For a long moment, there's silence. Then I feel a small, cold hand on my arm. I look up to see the doll sitting next to me on the bench, its expression almost thoughtful. "I want what every living thing wants," it says softly. "To survive, to thrive, to be." "But you're destroying me in the process," I argue. The doll shakes its head, an eerily human gesture. "No, I'm transforming you, elevating you. You're becoming something more than human, don't you see?" For a terrifying moment, I feel a flicker of understanding. The constant fear, the struggle for control, it's changing me, reshaping me into something new, something powerful. Something terrible. I shake my head violently, trying to dispel the thought. No, I say firmly. I won't let you win. I'll find a way to stop this, to get rid of you. The doll's laughter is soft, almost sad. Oh, my pet, you still don't understand. There is no getting rid of me. I am you now, as much as you are me. We're two sides of the same coin, bound together for eternity. As its words sink in, I feel something inside me begin to crack. The weight of hopelessness, of inevitability, threatens to crush me. I've run as far as I can, and still, the nightmare follows. In the distance, a clock tower begins to chime midnight. The doll's eyes seem to glow in the darkness, filled with an ancient, hungry light. The night is young, it says, its voice filled with anticipation. And we have so much more to explore together. As the final chime fades away, I realize with growing dread that my desperate escape has led me nowhere. The possession continues, the entity grows stronger, and I am lost in a strange town with nowhere left to run. The game, it seems, is far from over, and as the doll's laughter echoes through the empty park, I wonder if it ever truly will be. The flickering neon sign of the Sleepy Pine Motel casts an eerie glow through the grimy window of room 13. How fitting, I think grimly, that I'd end up here. I've spent the last few hours fortifying this dingy space, turning it into a last bastion against the horror that pursues me. Salt lines the doorway and windowsills. Makeshift traps, constructed from items scavenged from the motel and nearby convenience store, are scattered strategically around the room. Religious symbols from half a dozen faiths adorn the walls, a desperate attempt to ward off evil. As I finish laying the last line of salt, I catch a glimpse of myself in the cracked bathroom mirror. My eyes, still that unnatural glassy blue, are sunken, ringed with dark circles. My clothes are rumpled, my hair a tangled mess. I barely recognize the person staring back at me. This ends tonight, I say to my reflection, my voice hoarse but determined. One way or another. As if in response, I hear a soft, childlike giggle echoing from somewhere outside. My blood runs cold. It's found me. I check my watch. 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes until midnight. Somehow I know that's when it will come. The witching hour when the veil between worlds is at its thinnest. I position myself in the center of the room, surrounded by my hodgepodge of protections. In one hand, I clutch a crude wooden stake. In the other, a bottle of holy water I'd convinced a local priest to bless. Neither may do any good against something like the entity, but their presence gives me a modicum of comfort. The minutes tick by with agonizing slowness. Each passing second feels like an eternity, filled with the pounding of my heart and the soft, distant laughter that seems to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. At 11:59, the laughter stops abruptly. The sudden silence is somehow more terrifying than the sound had been. I tense, my eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign of movement. The digital clock on the nightstand flips to 12 count. For a moment, nothing happens. Then I hear it, the soft patter of tiny porcelain feet on worn carpet. "Ready or not, here I come," sings the doll's voice, sickeningly sweet. The door creaks open slowly, revealing an empty hallway beyond. But I know better than to trust my eyes. I grip my makeshift weapons tighter, my palms slick with sweat. "You can't hide from me," the voice whispers, now seeming to come from directly behind me. I whirl around, but there's nothing there. Suddenly, I catch a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turn just in time to see the doll perched atop the TV, its painted smile wider than ever. "Found you," it says, tilting its head in that unnatural way. I thrust the bottle of holy water forward, spraying its contents at the doll. "Back!" I shout. "I cast you out!" The doll doesn't even flinch as the water hits it. Instead, it laughs, a high, cruel sound that sets my teeth on edge. "Oh, my pet," it says, shaking its head in mock disappointment. "Still clinging to such quaint superstitions? I thought you'd have learned by now." With inhuman speed, it leaps from the TV to the bed, its movements a blur. I stumble backward, my back hitting the wall. The salt line at my feet offers no protection. The doll steps over it as if it weren't even there. "No," I whisper, my voice shaking. "Stay away from me." The doll's eyes, my eyes, bore into me. "But we've come so far together," it says, its voice dripping with false concern. "Why stop now? We're so close to becoming one." I feel a pressure building in my head, like something trying to claw its way into my mind. I squeeze my eyes shut, focusing all my willpower on keeping the entity out. "You can't have me," I grit out. "I won't let you in." The pressure increases, becoming almost unbearable. Behind my closed eyelids, I see flashes of nightmarish images, twisted landscapes, writhing shadows, faces contorted in eternal agony. The doll's voice echoes through my mind, no longer sweet but thunderous and terrible. "You are mine," it roars. "Your body, your mind, your soul, all belong to me," I cry out in pain, dropping to my knees. The wooden stake clatters to the floor, rolling away under the bed. With my last ounce of strength, I clutch the bottle of holy water to my chest like a lifeline. "No," I whisper, then louder. "No, I am my own. You have no power over me." For a moment, the pressure lessens. I dare to open my eyes, finding the doll standing inches from my face. Its expression is no longer mocking but furious. "You dare defy me?" it hisses, its voice a mixture of child and demon. "You are nothing but a vessel, a puppet for me to control." As it speaks, I feel my body begin to move against my will. My arms jerk spasmodically, my legs twitch and spasm. It's trying to take control, to puppet me like it has so many times before. But something is different this time. As I fight against the invisible force manipulating my limbs, I feel a surge of strength from deep within. It's as if all the fear, all the anger, all the determination I've felt over these hellish days has coalesced into a burning core of defiance. "No more," I growl, forcing my rebellious limbs to still. "This is my body, my mind, my life, and you are not welcome here." The doll's eyes widen in surprise, then narrow in rage. "You cannot resist me forever," it snarls. "I am eternal. I am power incarnate. I am—" "You are nothing but a parasite," I interrupt, my voice growing stronger. "A leech feeding off the fear and suffering of others. But not anymore, not with me, not—" I struggle to my feet, towering over the doll's small form. For the first time since this nightmare began, I see a flicker of uncertainty in its glassy eyes. "This ends now," I say, my voice ringing with newfound authority. The doll takes a step back, its movement suddenly less fluid, more jerky. You can't," it stammers, its voice losing its otherworldly resonance. I take a step forward, then another. With each step, I feel the entity's hold on me weaken. The unnatural blue begins to fade from my eyes, my natural brown irises reasserting themselves. "I cast you out," I say, the words coming unbidden to my lips. "I reclaim what is mine. You have no power here." The doll stumbles backward, its porcelain features contorting in a way that should be impossible. "No!" it shrieks, its voice a cacophony of different tones and pitches. "You cannot defeat me. I am—" But I never find out what it is. Because at that moment the doll's form begins to waver, like a mirage in the desert. Its outlines blur, shifting and changing in a nauseating display. "What's happening?" I gasp, taking an involuntary step back. The doll's laughter fills the room, but it's different now, deeper, more primal. "You wanted to see my true form?" it says, its voice no longer childlike but ancient and terrible. "Be careful what you wish for, mortal." Before my eyes, the doll's small form begins to grow, twisting and expanding in ways that defy the laws of physics. Its porcelain skin bubbles and melts, revealing something dark and writhing beneath. Limbs elongate, joints bend at impossible angles, and its once cute face stretches into a grotesque parody of humanity. What stands before me now is a nightmare given flesh. It towers over me, a mass of twisted limbs, gnashing teeth, and glowing eyes. Tendrils of shadow whip around it, reaching out hungrily towards me. "Behold," it says, its voice now a bone-shaking rumble, "the true face of your tormentor." I stumble backward, my back hitting the wall. Terror threatens to overwhelm me, to send me spiraling into madness. But I cling to the spark of defiance that burned so brightly moments ago. "No," I say, my voice shaking but resolute. "I don't care what you look like. You're still just a bully, a coward who preys on the weak, but I'm not weak anymore." The entity roars, a sound that shakes the very foundations of the motel. It lunges toward me, claws extended, maw gaping wide. Time seems to slow. In that moment I realize that this is it, the final stand. Either I defeat this thing here and now, or I lose everything, my body, my mind, my very soul. As the creature's claws reach for me, I close my eyes, focusing every ounce of my will on one thought. This is my life, my body, my mind, and you are not welcome here. I feel something shatter, not physically but deep within my psyche. There's a sound like breaking glass, a howl of fury and despair, and then silence. Slowly, hesitantly, I open my eyes. The motel room is a wreck. Furniture overturned, walls cracked, the air thick with dust. But of the nightmarish entity, there is no sign. On the floor at my feet lies the doll, small and innocuous once more. Its glassy eyes stare up at the ceiling, lifeless and empty. I collapse to my knees, exhaustion and relief washing over me in equal measure. It's over. Somehow, against all odds, I've won. As the first rays of dawn filter through the grimy window, I allow myself to weep. For all I've endured, for the person I was, and for the person I've become through this ordeal. The nightmare is over, but as I look at the innocent-seeming doll on the floor, I know that the memory of this terror will stay with me forever. The motel room trembles, plaster raining down from the cracked ceiling. The doll lies motionless at my feet, but the air crackles with malevolent energy. Something has changed. Something is terribly wrong. A low, rumbling laugh fills the room, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" The entity's voice booms, no longer confined to the doll's small form. Before my eyes, the air begins to ripple and distort. Shadows coalesce, twisting into a shape that defies description. A writhing mass of darkness, studded with glowing eyes and gnashing teeth. The entity, freed from its porcelain prison, looms over me. "At last," it growls, its voice a cacophony of 1,000 tortured souls. Free to feed, to consume, to destroy. A tendril of shadow lashes out, smashing through the wall as if it were made of paper. Outside, I hear screams of terror as people flee the devastation. Another tendril whips towards the ceiling, tearing through it effortlessly. The night sky is visible through the gaping hole, stars blotted out by the entity's expanding form. "Stop!" I cry out, my voice hoarse with fear and exhaustion. "You'll destroy everything." The entity's laughter shakes the foundations of the building. "That's the idea, little mortal. This world will be my feast, and you will bear witness to its end." More tendrils lash out, destroying everything they touch. I watch in horror as cars are crushed, trees uprooted, and buildings collapse. The entity grows with each act of destruction, its form expanding to blot out more and more of the sky. Panic grips me. This is my fault. In my desperation to free myself, I've unleashed something far worse upon the world. I have to stop it, but how? What can one person do against such monstrous power? As if sensing my thoughts, the entity turns its attention back to me. "You freed me," it purrs, its voice a twisted parody of affection. "For that, I'll grant you the honor of being the last to die. Watch as I devour everything you've ever known and loved." Its words spark a memory, something the doll had said during our final confrontation. You are nothing but a parasite, I had told it. A leech feeding off the fear and suffering of others. A parasite. A leech. Something that needs a host to survive. In that moment, a terrible clarity washes over me. I know what I have to do. You're wrong, I say, forcing steel into my voice despite the terror coursing through me. I won't be watching anything, because you're coming with me. The entity pauses in its destruction, a ripple of confusion passing through its amorphous form. What nonsense do you speak, mortal? I stand tall, meeting its gaze with unwavering determination. You need a host, don't you? A vessel to contain your essence. That's why you were bound to the doll. Well, I'm offering you a new home. Me. For a moment, there's silence. Then the entity's laughter resumes, louder than ever. You would sacrifice yourself? How noble. How utterly futile. What makes you think you could contain me any better than that pitiful doll? I smile, a grim, humorless expression. Because I'm choosing it. I'm inviting you in, and once you're inside me, I'm taking us both out. Before the entity can respond, I close my eyes and open my mind, dropping every mental barrier I've fought so hard to maintain. Come on then, I whisper. Come and get me. I feel it immediately, a rush of icy coldness flooding into me, filling every cell of my body. The pain is excruciating, like being torn apart and put back together 1,000 times over. I hear myself screaming, but the sound seems distant, unimportant. Through the haze of agony, I force my hand into my pocket, fingers closing around the lighter I'd used to set my traps earlier. With the last of my strength, I flick it to life. The entity, now partially absorbed into my body, realizes too late what's happening. No! It roars, its voice echoing both inside my head and in the air around us. What are you doing? Ending this, I grit out through clenched teeth. Once and for all. I let the lighter fall. In the split second before it hits the ground, time seems to slow. I see the entity's tendrils thrashing wildly, trying to extract itself from my body. I see the fear in its many eyes, fear of a mere mortal who dared to defy it. The lighter touches the gasoline-soaked carpet, and the world explodes into flame. Fire engulfs us both, searing heat that makes the entity's icy presence feel like a fond memory. Its screams mingle with my own as we burn together, captor and captive united in our final moments. Through the inferno, I see flashes of the entity's true form. Not the nightmarish beast it had become, but something older, sadder, a being of pure energy, twisted by millennia of feeding on fear and suffering. In its dying moments, I feel a flicker of something almost like gratitude. Thank you, it whispers, its voice no longer monstrous but achingly human, for setting me free. Then there's nothing but light, heat, and a sense of falling into endless darkness. Months later, in a bustling city far from the site of that fateful confrontation, an antique fair is in full swing. Collectors and curiosity seekers browse stalls filled with relics from bygone eras, each item holding its own story. In one corner, partially hidden behind more ostentatious displays, sits a small table. A handwritten sign proclaims oddities and curios in faded ink. Among the assortment of strange trinkets and weathered artifacts, something catches the eye of a young woman browsing the stall. It's a doll, or what's left of one. Its porcelain surface is cracked and blackened, twisted by intense heat into a grotesque parody of its former shape. One glassy eye remains, staring sightlessly at passers-by. Despite its ruined state, or perhaps because of it, the doll exudes an aura of mystery, of secrets waiting to be uncovered. The woman picks it up, turning it over in her hands. What happened to this poor thing? She asks the stall owner, an elderly man with knowing eyes. He shrugs, an enigmatic smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Hard to say, miss. It came from the site of a motel fire a few months back. Terrible tragedy, that. They say the only survivor was this little fellow here. The woman frowns, struck by an inexplicable sense of unease. Survivor? It's just a doll. The old man's smile widens. Is it now? Sometimes, miss, things aren't quite what they seem, especially when it comes to old toys. They have a way of holding on to things, if you take my meaning. She starts to set the doll back down but hesitates. Despite its unsettling appearance, she feels drawn to it, like it's calling to her somehow. How much? She asks, almost against her will. As money changes hands and the doll is carefully wrapped, neither buyer nor seller notices the faintest flicker of blue in its remaining eye. Nor do they hear the soft, childlike giggle that seems to echo on the breeze. In a city far away, a new story is about to begin, and somewhere beyond the veil of reality, an entity stirs, ready to play once more. The game, it seems, is far from over. The park was quieter than usual that Sunday afternoon. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of freshly cut grass and the promise of a lazy summer day. I had come here to clear my head, to escape the suffocating walls of my apartment and the endless stream of notifications on my phone. Little did I know that this simple decision would be the catalyst for a nightmare beyond imagination. I found a spot near the center of the park, far enough from the joggers and the playful barks of dogs to feel truly alone. The grass tickled my arms as I stretched out, my eyes drawn to the vast expanse of blue above. Puffy white clouds drifted lazily across the sky, their shapes morphing and changing with each passing moment. Just breathe, Jack, I muttered to myself, inhaling deeply. Let it all go. For a while, it worked. I felt the tension in my muscles begin to ease, my racing thoughts slowing to a crawl. I started to do what I used to do as a kid, finding shapes in the clouds. There was a rabbit, its ears elongated and comical. A few feet away, a dragon seemed to be chasing it, its cloudy maw open wide. But then something changed. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I almost missed it. The rabbit's eye seemed to blink. I shook my head, convinced it was a trick of the light or my imagination running wild. But when I looked back, the eye was still there and it was unmistakably looking at me. What the hell? I whispered, my heart rate picking up. I shifted my gaze to the dragon and a chill ran down my spine. Its shapeless face had taken on distinct human features, eyes, nose, mouth, all focused intently on me. As I watched, frozen in disbelief, more faces began to form in the surrounding clouds. Dozens, then hundreds of them, each one unique and terrifyingly real. I blinked hard, squeezing my eyes shut. This isn't real. This isn't happening, I said through gritted teeth. But when I opened my eyes, the faces were still there, even more defined than before. Panic rising in my chest, I scrambled to my feet, nearly losing my balance in my haste. The faces in the clouds tracked my movement, their expressions shifting from neutral to something more hungry. I spun in a circle, my breath coming in short gasps as I realized I was surrounded on all sides by these impossible, watchful eyes. Hey, mister, are you okay? A small voice asked. I whirled around to see a young girl, no more than 7 or 8, looking up at me with concern. Her mother stood a few feet away, eyeing me warily. The clouds, I stammered, pointing upwards. Can't you see them? The faces? The girl and her mother both looked up, then back at me with matching expressions of confusion. I think you've been out in the sun too long, the mother said, gently pulling her daughter away. Come on, sweetie, let's go. As they hurried off, I heard the girl ask, Mommy, why was that man acting crazy? I wanted to scream, to grab them and make them understand what I was seeing. But a larger part of me was relieved that they couldn't see it. Because if they could, it would mean that this was real. And I wasn't ready to accept that possibility. My feet began to move of their own accord, first at a brisk walk, then breaking into a run. I fled across the park, the weight of 1,000 cloudy gazes pressing down on me. Joggers and picnickers turned to stare as I passed, no doubt wondering what had spooked me. If only they knew. As I neared the park's exit, I risked one more glance at the sky. The faces had multiplied, filling every inch of visible space above. And they were changing, their expressions morphing from curiosity to something darker, more malevolent. I saw sneers, leers, and looks of such profound hunger that it made my blood run cold. I burst out onto the city street, nearly colliding with a group of teenagers engrossed in their phones. They shouted obscenities as I pushed past them, but I didn't care. I had to get away, had to find shelter from those watching eyes. "Get a grip, Jack," I panted as I ran. "You're losing it. It's not real. It can't be real." But even as I said the words, I knew in my heart that something had fundamentally changed. The world I knew, the safe, predictable reality I had always taken for granted, had been torn away. And what lay behind it was something vast, ancient, and terrifyingly aware. I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment building. As I fumbled with my keys, an elderly neighbor stepped out into the hallway. "Goodness, Jack," Mrs. Pendleton said, clutching her small dog to her chest. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a weak smile. "Just getting some exercise, Mrs. P. Beautiful day out there." "If you say so, dear," she replied, eyeing me suspiciously. "Though it looks like it might rain. The sky's gotten awfully dark all of a sudden." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean?" "Well, look for yourself," she said, gesturing towards the window at the end of the hall. With trembling steps, I approached the window. The sky, which had been a brilliant blue just minutes ago, was now roiling with dark, heavy clouds. And in those clouds, barely visible but unmistakably there, were the faces, watching, waiting. "No," I whispered, stumbling back. "No, no, no." I ignored Mrs. Pendleton's concerned calls as I finally got my door open and practically fell inside. I slammed the door shut behind me, sliding the deadbolt into place with shaking hands, as if a locked door could keep out whatever was up there. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. I pulled it out to see a string of messages from my girlfriend, Sarah. "Hey, where are you? Thought we were meeting for lunch." "Jack, everything okay?" "You're starting to worry me. Call me when you get this." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. What could I possibly say to her? How could I explain what I'd seen without sounding completely insane? Another buzz, another message from Sarah. "Just check the weather. Crazy how fast that storm rolled in. Stay dry." I let the phone slip from my fingers, not even flinching as it clattered to the floor. She had seen the clouds, but had she seen what was in them? And if not, why was I the only one who could? As I sank to the floor, my back against the door, I realized that my life had irrevocably changed. Whatever I had seen in those clouds, whatever had seen me, wasn't going to simply go away. This was only the beginning. And as the first drops of rain began to patter against my window, I couldn't shake the feeling that each one carried a piece of those watchful, hungry faces, seeping into our world, drop by terrifying drop. The sound of the door slamming behind me echoed through my small apartment, momentarily drowning out the frantic pounding of my heart. I leaned against it, my chest heaving as I struggled to catch my breath. The cool metal of the doorknob was still clutched in my white-knuckled grip, as if letting go might allow those impossible, watching faces to seep in through the cracks. "Get it together, Jack," I muttered to myself, forcing my fingers to uncurl. "You're safe now. You're inside. They can't see you in here." But even as I said the words, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. It was as if the very air had become charged with an otherworldly awareness. I stumbled further into the apartment, my gaze darting nervously to every window, every reflective surface. The incessant buzzing of my phone cut through the silence, making me jump. I fumbled it out of my pocket, nearly dropping it in my haste. The screen was lit up with a barrage of notifications, most of them from Sarah. "Jack, where are you? Is everything okay? You're really starting to worry me. Please call me back. I'm coming over if I don't hear from you soon." Guilt twisted in my gut. In my panic, I'd completely forgotten about our plans. I should call her back, try to explain. But how could I possibly put into words what I'd seen? She'd think I was crazy. Hell, maybe I was crazy. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. Instead, I typed out a quick message. Sorry, wasn't feeling well, came home to rest. Talk later. It was a cop-out and I knew it, but it was the best I could manage right now. I silenced the phone and tossed it onto the couch, unable to bear the thought of further communication. The curtains. I had to close the curtains. The thought hit me with sudden urgency, and I rushed to the windows, yanking the heavy fabric across each one. The room plunged into a murky twilight, but it did little to ease my nerves. If anything, the shadows seemed to deepen, taking on shapes that were almost but not quite familiar. There's nothing there, I said aloud, trying to convince myself. It's just your imagination playing tricks on you. But even as I spoke, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I whirled around, heart in my throat, only to find my own reflection staring back at me from the darkened TV screen. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw something else there too. A face that wasn't my own, watching from behind my shoulder. I blinked, and it was gone. Sleep. I needed sleep. Maybe if I could just rest, I'd wake up and find this had all been some bizarre dream. I stumbled to the bedroom, not bothering to undress as I collapsed onto the bed. But as soon as I closed my eyes, the faces were there waiting for me. They swirled behind my eyelids, a kaleidoscope of ethereal visages. Some were benign, almost curious. Others wore expressions of such malevolence that it made my skin crawl. And all of them, every single one, was focused intently on me. I jolted upright, a cold sweat breaking out across my skin. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:47 a.m. I'd been tossing and turning for hours, caught in a limbo between waking terror and nightmare-filled almost sleep. This isn't happening, I groaned, pressing the heels of my hands against my eyes until I saw sparks. This can't be happening. But every time I closed my eyes, every time I started to drift off, the faces were there, watching, waiting. For what, I couldn't begin to imagine, and that uncertainty was perhaps the most terrifying part of all. The night stretched on endlessly. I paced the apartment, checked and rechecked the locks, and jumped at every creak and groan of the building settling. By the time the first gray light of dawn began to seep through the cracks in the curtains, I was a jittery, exhausted mess. I must have finally dozed off at some point because the next thing I knew, I was jerking awake to the shrill beeping of my alarm clock. I slapped at it blindly, my mind foggy with fatigue. As consciousness slowly returned, so did the memories of the previous day. The park, the clouds, the faces. Just a dream, I mumbled, trying to convince myself. It was all just a messed up dream. But the lingering unease in my gut told me otherwise. I rolled over, squinting at the clock, and felt my heart drop. 9:47 a.m. The meeting. The incredibly important client meeting that I was supposed to lead at 9 a.m. Shit! I exclaimed, scrambling out of bed. Shit! 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 I grabbed my phone, wincing at the flood of missed calls and increasingly frantic text messages from my boss and coworkers. This was bad. This was career-endingly bad. As I rushed to throw on somewhat presentable clothes, my phone rang again. It was Sarah. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Jack? Oh, thank God. Her voice came through, tinged with relief and irritation. What the hell is going on? I've been worried sick. I'm sorry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't feeling well yesterday, and I guess I overslept. I missed a huge meeting, Sarah. I might lose my job over this. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Sarah spoke again, her tone had softened. Are you okay? You sound off. Do you need me to come over? The thought of seeing her, of having to explain face to face what had happened, sent a jolt of panic through me. No, I said too quickly. I mean, no, it's fine. I need to get to the office and try to salvage this situation. I'll call you later, okay? Jack. Sarah started, but I cut her off. I've got to go. I'll call you later, I promise. I ended the call before she could say anything else, guilt gnawing at me. I knew I was pushing her away, knew I was acting erratically. But how could I possibly explain what was happening when I didn't understand it myself? As I rushed out the door, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. The face that stared back at me was haggard, with dark circles under wild, haunted eyes. I barely recognized myself. For a moment, just a fleeting instant, I thought I saw something else in that reflection. A shimmer of cloudy forms, faces peering out from behind my own. I blinked, and they were gone, but the feeling of being watched, of being hunted by something vast and incomprehensible lingered. I hurried out of the building, keeping my eyes firmly fixed on the ground. I couldn't bring myself to look up at the sky. Not yet. Not when I had no idea what I might see looking back at me. As I hailed a cab to take me to the office, one thought kept repeating in my mind. This was only the beginning. Whatever had started in that park, whatever had seen me and marked me, wasn't done with me yet. And I had a sinking feeling that my orderly, normal life was about to unravel in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, revealing the bustling office floor. I stepped out, my eyes immediately darting to the large windows that lined the far wall. The sky outside was a dull gray, overcast but seemingly normal. No faces. Not yet, anyway. Jack, where the hell have you been? I flinched at the sharp voice, turning to see my colleague Mike striding towards me. His face was a mixture of concern and annoyance. I overslept, I mumbled, knowing how pathetic it sounded. Mike's eyebrows shot up. Overslept? Do you have any idea what kind of shitstorm you've caused? The Hendersons were furious. It took all of Janet's charm to keep them from walking out entirely. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. The Hendersons were our biggest potential client. Losing them would be disastrous for the company and for my career. I'm sorry, I said, running a hand through my disheveled hair. I don't know what happened, I haven't been feeling well. Mike's expression softened slightly. Look, man, you don't look great. Maybe you should. But I was no longer listening. Over Mike's shoulder through the window, I saw a cloud shift. For a moment, just a fleeting instant, I could have sworn I saw an eye form in its misty depths, staring directly at me. Jack? Hey, Earth to Jack. Mike was waving his hand in front of my face. I blinked, forcing my attention back to him. Sorry, what were you saying? Mike frowned, following my gaze to the window. What are you looking at? Nothing, I said quickly. Too quickly. Just nothing. I should get to my desk. Try to salvage what I can of this mess. I hurried past him, feeling his confused stare on my back. As I settled into my chair, I couldn't help but notice the hushed whispers and sidelong glances from my coworkers. They were talking about me, I realized, speculating about my absence, my appearance, my strange behavior. I tried to focus on my computer screen, to lose myself in emails and reports, but my eyes kept being drawn to the windows. Every shift of the clouds, every play of light and shadow seemed to hide watching eyes and knowing smiles. Get a grip, I muttered to myself, rubbing my temples. You're just sleep-deprived and stressed. Pull yourself together. Hours passed in a haze of paranoia and distraction. I jumped at every sound, flinched at every movement in my peripheral vision. By the time the afternoon meeting rolled around, I was a nervous wreck. I shuffled into the conference room, clutching a fresh cup of coffee like a lifeline. Janet, our head of sales, was already there, setting up for the presentation. Jack, she said, her tone carefully neutral, glad you could join us today. I winced at the subtle rebuke. Janet, I'm so sorry about this morning. She held up a hand, cutting me off. Save it. We managed to smooth things over with the Hendersons, no thanks to you. Just try not to screw up this presentation, okay? I nodded mutely, sinking into a chair as other team members began to file in. The meeting started, but I found it hard to concentrate on Janet's words. My gaze kept drifting to the windows, searching the sky for signs of those impossible faces. "Jack! Jack!" Janet's sharp voice snapped me back to attention. "Do you want to take us through the next section?" "Oh, yes, of course." I fumbled with my papers, trying to find my place. As I started to speak, I lifted my coffee cup to my lips, desperate for a hit of caffeine to clear my head. That's when I saw it. In the rising steam from my cup, a face began to form. It was subtle at first, just a suggestion of features. But as I watched, frozen in horror, it became clearer. Eyes, nose, mouth, all formed from the swirling vapor, and all focused intently on me. The cup slipped from my nerveless fingers, shattering on the table and splashing hot coffee across my lap. I barely felt the burn, too transfixed by the dissipating steam, and the face that was fading with it. "Jesus, Jack," someone exclaimed. "Are you all right?" I became aware of the room again, of my colleagues staring at me with a mixture of concern and alarm. Janet's face was a mask of barely contained fury. I need to use the restroom," I stammered, bolting from my chair. I ignored the calls of my name as I fled the conference room, my heart pounding in my chest. I burst into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My reflection in the mirror was wild-eyed and pale. I turned on the faucet, splashing cold water on my face in an attempt to shock myself back to reality. But as I looked up, water dripping from my chin, I saw them. In each droplet, in the mist on the mirror, tiny faces were forming. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all watching me with an intensity that felt like a physical weight. I stumbled backward, a strangled cry escaping my lips. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. A knock at the door made me jump. "Jack, are you okay in there?" It was Mike's voice, laced with genuine concern. I'm fine," I called back, my voice shaking. Just give me a minute." I turned back to the mirror, but the faces were gone. The droplets were just water again, the mist just condensation. Had I imagined it all? When I finally emerged from the bathroom, I found Mike waiting for me, his brow furrowed as he took in my appearance. "Jack, man, you look like hell. What's going on with you?" Before I could formulate a response, Janet appeared at the end of the hallway. Her expression was grim. "Jack, my office now." The walk to Janet's office felt like a march to the gallows. As we entered, she gestured for me to sit, then closed the door behind us. "Jack," she began, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I'm going to be blunt here. You're one of our best people, but lately, well, frankly, you're becoming a liability." I opened my mouth to protest, but she held up a hand, silencing me. "I don't know what's going on with you, and honestly, it's not my place to pry. But whatever it is, it's clearly affecting your work. And after today's performance," she sighed, shaking her head, "I think it's best if you take some time off." "Time off?" I echoed, a note of panic creeping into my voice. "Janet, please, I can't." "This isn't a suggestion, Jack," she said firmly. "It's an order. Take a week, maybe 2. Get some rest, see a doctor if you need to. But get yourself sorted out. Because if things don't improve when you come back..." She left the threat unspoken, but I understood it clearly. I nodded numbly, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under me. As I stood to leave, Janet's voice stopped me. "Jack?" I turned back to see genuine concern in her eyes. "Whatever's going on, I hope you get it figured out. We need you back at your best." I managed a weak smile and a nod before stumbling out of her office. As I gathered my things, ignoring the curious stares of my coworkers, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was unraveling. The faces in the clouds, in the steam, in the water droplets, they were impossible, and yet I'd seen them. Was I losing my mind? As I left the building, I couldn't stop myself from looking up at the sky. The clouds were darker now, roiling with barely contained energy. And there, just for a moment, I saw them again. Faces upon faces all turned towards me, all wearing expressions of hungry anticipation. I hurried down the street, my collar turned up against more than just the chill in the air. Whatever was happening to me, whatever those faces wanted, I had a sinking feeling that my forced time off was going to be anything but restful. The whispers had begun, and I feared they were only going to get louder. The lock clicked into place with a sound of finality. I leaned against the door, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The walk home from the office had been a nightmare of furtive glances and barely contained panic. Every reflective surface, car windows, puddles, even the screens of passing smartphones, seemed to hold the potential for those watching faces to appear. Now, in the relative safety of my apartment, I could feel the adrenaline ebbing away, leaving me shaky and exhausted. But I couldn't rest, not yet. There was too much to do. I started with the windows, drawing the curtains tight, and then, for good measure, taping thick black garbage bags over them. The darkness that fell over the apartment was oppressive, but it was better than the alternative. Better than those watchful eyes peering in at me. Next came the mirrors. The bathroom mirror was the first to go, covered with an old bedsheet I found in the closet. I moved through the apartment methodically, draping fabric over picture frames, unplugging the TV, even turning my phone face down on the kitchen counter. As I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was as if the very air had eyes, as if the shadows themselves were alive and aware. I shook my head, trying to dispel the thought. This was madness. I knew it was madness. And yet, a knock at the door made me jump, nearly dropping the sheet I was using to cover the microwave door. "Jack, are you in there?" Sarah's voice, muffled but unmistakable, came through the door. "Your neighbors said they saw you come home. Please, I'm worried about you." I froze, caught between the desire to see her, to feel some human connection, and the overwhelming fear that by letting her in, I'd be exposing her to whatever this was. "Jack, I can hear you moving around in there. Please just talk to me." I approached the door cautiously, pressing my hand against its cool surface. "Sarah," I called back, my voice hoarse. I can't let you in. It's not safe." There was a pause, then, "Not safe? Jack, what are you talking about? What's going on?" "I can't explain it," I said, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "You wouldn't believe me if I tried. Just, please go home. I need to figure this out on my own." "Figure what out?" Sarah's voice was rising, a mix of frustration and fear. "Jack, you're scaring me. Let me in, or I swear I'll call the police." "No!" I shouted, more forcefully than I intended. "No police. No one can come in. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. But you have to go. Please." I heard her sob, a sound that tore at my heart. "Jack, please, I love you. Let me help you." "I love you too," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "That's why I have to keep you safe." I stayed there, hand pressed against the door, until I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway. Only then did I allow myself to slide to the floor, burying my face in my hands as the tears finally came. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Time seemed to lose all meaning in the perpetual twilight of my barricaded apartment. I paced restlessly, jumping at every creak and groan of the building settling. Sleep, when it came, was fitful and plagued by nightmares. In a desperate bid to understand what was happening to me, I turned to the internet. My phone became a lifeline to the outside world, as I scoured forums and conspiracy theory sites, searching for anyone who might have experienced something similar. Most of what I found was clearly the ramblings of the unhinged or the blatantly fictional. But here and there, buried in the depths of obscure message boards, I found accounts that made my blood run cold. Stories of people who had seen faces in the clouds, in reflections, in the patterns of everyday life. People who spoke of whispers in the night, of a growing sense of being watched by something vast and unknowable. Many of these accounts ended abruptly, the posters simply vanishing from the forums without explanation. Those that continued often descended into incoherent paranoia, or claims of enlightenment that rang hollow and desperate. As I read, I became aware of a soft, persistent sound at the edge of my hearing. At first I thought it was just the hum of my phone or maybe tinnitus brought on by stress and lack of sleep. But as the hours wore on, it began to resolve into something more deliberate. Whispers. Countless overlapping whispers just below the threshold of comprehension. I tried to block them out, cranking up music through my headphones, but they seemed to seep through every defense. When sleep finally claimed me, the whispers followed me into my dreams. I found myself floating in an endless void, surrounded by faces formed from mist and shadow. They pressed in close, their voices a cacophony of unintelligible sounds that nonetheless filled me with a sense of terrible urgency. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat and tangled in my bedsheets. The whispers lingered for a moment before fading, leaving behind an oppressive silence. I fumbled for my phone, squinting at the too bright screen. 3:47 a.m. The same time I'd woken that first night after seeing the faces in the park. Was it significant or just a coincidence? As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I became aware of a faint glow coming from the wall beside my bed. I turned and felt my heart stop. There, etched into the plaster as if burned by acid, were symbols. Dozens of them, arranged in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and dance if I looked at them too long. They were like nothing I'd ever seen before. Not quite hieroglyphics, not quite mathematical equations, but something in between and beyond. I scrambled out of bed, my back hitting the opposite wall as I stared in horror at the impossible markings. I hadn't put them there. I couldn't have. And yet here they were, glowing with a soft, pulsing light that seemed to come from within the wall itself. As I watched, transfixed, the whispers returned. Louder now, more insistent. And for the first time, I could almost make out words. Chosen, conduit, awakening. Soon. No, I moaned, pressing my hands over my ears. This isn't real. This can't be real. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Whatever was happening to me, whatever had marked me that day in the park, it was all too real, and it was only getting stronger. I sank to the floor, my eyes never leaving the glowing symbols on the wall. The whispers continued, a relentless tide of sound that threatened to drown out my own thoughts. As the first light of dawn began to seep around the edges of my makeshift window coverings, I came to a grim realization. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't hide from this. Whatever was coming for me, whatever these entities or forces wanted, I had to face it. Because if I didn't, if I continued to cower in the dark, I feared I might lose what was left of my sanity. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone. There was one last, desperate option, one person who might be able to help me make sense of all this. I just hoped they would believe me. As I dialed the number, the whispers grew to a fever pitch as if trying to drown out the ringing. But I steeled myself, forcing the words out as soon as I heard the click of the line connecting. Dr. Evelyn, my name is Jack. I think I'm being haunted by faces in the clouds. Please, I need your help. The whispers fell silent, waiting. And in that moment of quiet, I realized that whatever came next would change everything. For better or for worse, my old life was over. The real journey was just beginning. The neon sign flickered erratically, casting an eerie blue glow over the rain-slicked street. Madame Zora's psychic readings, it proclaimed in gaudy cursive. I stood before the narrow storefront, my heart pounding in my chest. This was madness, I knew. But after everything I'd experienced, after the terrifying night with the glowing symbols, I was desperate for any answers I could find. I pushed open the door, a tinny bell announcing my arrival. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from a stereotypical psychic's shop. Beaded curtains, crystal balls, and the cloying scent of incense hanging heavy in the air. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet space. "Is anyone here?" A rustling came from behind a curtained doorway, and a moment later a woman emerged. She was older, with wild gray hair and eyes lined with kohl. Her flowing robes sparkled with embroidered symbols that made my vision swim if I looked at them too long. "Welcome, Seeker," she intoned, her voice rich and theatrical. "I am Madame Zora. How may I illuminate your path to—" She stopped abruptly as her eyes met mine. The color drained from her face and she stumbled backward, knocking over a display of tarot cards. "You," she whispered, her eyes wide with what I could only describe as terror. "It's you, the one they spoke of." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean? Who spoke of me?" Madame Zora seemed to collect herself, drawing herself up to her full height. "Come," she said, her voice now tight with urgency. "We must speak in private." She led me through the curtained doorway into a small back room. A round table dominated the space, covered in a deep purple cloth. She gestured for me to sit, then took the seat opposite me, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed her robes. "I have seen you in my visions," she began, her eyes never leaving my face. "For years, I have glimpsed fragments of a great change coming, but I never understood, never saw the whole picture. Until now." I leaned forward, my heart racing. "What change? What are you talking about?" "There is an ancient prophecy," Madame Zora said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Passed down through generations of true seers. It speaks of a time when the veil between worlds would thin, when entities from beyond our reality would seek a way in." I felt the blood drain from my face. The faces in the clouds, the whispers in the night. Could it be real? "The prophecy speaks of a conduit," she continued, "a chosen one who would bridge the gap between worlds. And you, my dear, bear all the signs. You have been marked by them, haven't you?" I nodded numbly, unable to find my voice. "You have seen them?" Madame Zora pressed. "The watchers in the sky. You have heard their whispers, felt their gaze upon you." "Yes," I croaked. "But why me? I'm nobody special. I'm just me." Madame Zora reached across the table, grasping my hands in hers. Her skin was cool and dry like old parchment. "The choosing is not ours to understand. But make no mistake, you have been chosen for a great purpose. You are to be the vessel through which—" She cut off abruptly, her whole body going rigid. Her eyes rolled back in her head, showing only the whites, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. It was deeper, resonant, and seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The time is upon us," she intoned, the words echoing in the small room. "The veil thins, the watchers descend. The conduit must open the way." I tried to pull my hands away, but her grip was like iron. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing in on me from all sides. "Hear us, chosen one," the voice continued, Madame Zora's mouth moving in ways that seemed impossible. "Embrace your destiny. Become the bridge between worlds." The room began to shake. At first, I thought it was just my own trembling, but then I saw objects starting to rattle on the shelves. A crystal ball rolled off its stand, shattering on the floor. Books flew from their shelves as if thrown by invisible hands. "I don't understand," I shouted over the growing cacophony. "What do you want from me?" But Madame Zora, or whatever was speaking through her, gave no answer. Instead, her mouth opened impossibly wide, and a sound emerged that I can only describe as the auditory equivalent of tearing reality. It was a scream, a roar, and a cosmic hum all at once, and it filled my head until I thought my skull would split. I wrenched my hands free and stumbled to my feet, knocking over my chair in the process. The shaking had intensified, and I could hear the building groaning around us. Cracks were spreading across the ceiling, raining plaster dust down on us. "I'm sorry," I gasped, though I'm not sure if I was addressing Madame Zora or the entities speaking through her. I can't do this." I turned and ran, ducking to avoid a flying book that nearly took my head off. I burst through the curtain and into the front room, which was in similar chaos. The neon sign had come loose from the window and was sparking dangerously on the floor. I didn't stop to look back, didn't pause to see if Madame Zora was okay. I just ran, yanking open the door and stumbling out into the rain-soaked night. The street was deserted, the usual bustle of the city oddly absent. I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath and process what had just happened. It was real. It was all real. The faces, the whispers, the prophecy. Somehow, impossibly, it was all true. Welcome, awakened one. The voice, calm and reverent, made me snap upright. There, emerging from the shadows of a nearby alley, were 5 figures in hooded robes. They moved with an eerie grace, spreading out to form a semicircle around me. Who are you? I managed to ask, my voice shaking. The central figure stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal a face that was both young and impossibly ancient. We are the Watchers of the Veil, he said. We have awaited your awakening for centuries. As one, the robed figures sank to their knees, bowing their heads before me. The prophecy is fulfilled, the leader intoned. The awakened one has come. I backed away, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a dream, a hallucination, anything but reality. And yet, as I looked at the kneeling figures, as I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me, I knew that this was all too real. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, you've got the wrong person. I can't be what you think I am. The leader raised his head, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made me shiver. You bear the mark of the Watchers, he said. You have seen beyond the veil. There is no mistaking who you are, awakened one. Stop calling me that, I shouted, my fear turning to anger. My name is Jack. I'm nobody. I can't be your chosen one or your conduit or whatever you think I am. The robed figures remained unmoved by my outburst. The leader slowly rose to his feet, extending a hand towards me. Come with us, awakened one, he said. We will show you the truth of your destiny. We will prepare you for what is to come. I stared at his outstretched hand, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on me. I could go with them, learn more about this supposed prophecy, this destiny they claimed was mine. Or I could run, try to escape whatever madness had engulfed my life. In that moment, standing in the rain with robed cultists kneeling before me and the echoes of cosmic whispers still ringing in my ears, I made my choice. And as I did, I felt something shift, both within me and in the world around me. Whatever came next, there would be no going back. The journey to the compound was a blur of winding roads and dense forest. I sat in the back of a nondescript van, surrounded by the silent, robed figures. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Part of me still clung to the hope that this was all some elaborate hoax or a vivid nightmare, but deep down, I knew the truth. There was no going back now. As the van came to a stop, the leader, who had introduced himself simply as Elias, turned to me. We have arrived, awakened one. Are you ready to embrace your destiny? I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. I don't know, but I'm ready to understand. Elias nodded solemnly. Understanding is the first step on the path to enlightenment. Come. We stepped out of the van into a moonlit clearing. Before us stood a sprawling compound, its architecture a strange blend of ancient stone structures and sleek modern additions. At its center rose a towering observatory, its dome gleaming in the starlight. As we approached, I saw more robed figures emerging from various buildings, all turning to stare at me with a mixture of awe and reverence. I felt exposed, vulnerable under their collective gaze. Welcome, Elias announced, his voice carrying across the compound, to the sanctuary of the cult of the sky. The name sent a shiver down my spine. The cult of the sky? I echoed. Elias nodded, a hint of pride in his voice. For centuries we have watched the heavens, interpreting the signs, preparing for this moment, for your arrival. Awakened One. He led me into the largest building, its cavernous interior lit by flickering torches and strange, pulsing crystals. The walls were covered in intricate murals depicting swirling clouds and cosmic vistas, and there, rendered in exquisite detail, were the faces. The very same faces that had been haunting me for days. "You've seen them," I breathed, reaching out to touch the painted surface. "The Watchers," Elias confirmed. "The entities that exist beyond the veil of our reality. They have chosen you as their conduit, the bridge between worlds." Another robed figure approached, carrying an ancient leather-bound tome. Elias took it reverently, opening it to a marked page. "This text," he explained, "contains prophecies passed down through generations. It speaks of a time when the boundaries between realities would weaken, allowing the Watchers to make contact." I leaned in, my eyes widening as I saw illustrations that could have been pulled directly from my nightmares. There were diagrams of the human body, showing swirling energy patterns, and there, unmistakable, were the strange symbols I had seen carved into my bedroom wall. "What does it all mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elias's eyes gleamed with fervor. "It means, Awakened One, that you are the key to a global transformation. Through you, the wisdom of the Watchers will flow into our world, ushering in a new age of enlightenment and cosmic awareness." The weight of his words settled over me like a physical presence. "But why me? I'm nobody special. I'm just Jack." Elias smiled, a gentleness in his expression that surprised me. "The Watchers do not choose based on our limited human understanding of special. They see potential that we cannot comprehend. You, Jack, have been chosen for reasons beyond our mortal grasp." As he spoke, more cultists entered the room, carrying various items: bowls of strange, shimmering liquids, bundles of herbs that gave off otherworldly scents, and intricate metal devices I couldn't begin to understand. "We must prepare you for the ritual," Elias explained. "It will open your mind fully to the Watchers, allowing you to channel their presence more completely." A flicker of fear ignited in my chest. Is it safe?" Elias hesitated for a moment before answering. "There is always risk in touching the divine Awakened One, but we have prepared for this moment for generations. We will guide you through the process." As the cultists began to arrange their items in a complex pattern around me, I scanned the room, trying to take in every detail. That's when I saw her. Sarah. She stood among the robed figures, her face partially obscured by a hood. But there was no mistaking those eyes, the curve of her cheek. My heart leapt. "Sarah," I called out, relief flooding through me. Finally, a familiar face in this sea of madness. "Sarah, it's me. What are you doing here?" But as she turned towards me, I felt my blood run cold. There was no recognition in her eyes, no warmth, no sign of the woman I loved. She stared at me with the same reverent blankness as the other cultists. "Sarah," I said again, my voice cracking. "Sarah, please." Elias placed a hand on my shoulder. "The one you knew as Sarah has been with us for some time, Awakened One. She was drawn here by the same cosmic forces that led you to us. But her role is different from yours. She has been prepared." "Prepared?" I echoed, a sick feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. "What does that mean? What have you done to her?" "We have opened her mind to the Watchers," Elias explained calmly. "She serves now as a vessel for their will, helping to anchor their presence in our reality. It is an honor few are chosen for." I stared at Sarah, or the shell that had once been Sarah, feeling a mix of horror and grief wash over me. Had she been part of this all along? Or had she, like me, stumbled into something beyond her understanding? Before I could voice any of these questions, Elias clapped his hands, drawing my attention back to him. "It is time, Awakened One. The alignment of the stars is perfect, and the Watchers grow restless. We must begin the ritual. The cultists formed a circle around me, their voices rising in a chant that seemed to resonate on a frequency just beyond normal human hearing. Elias approached with a goblet filled with a swirling opalescent liquid. "Drink," he instructed. "Let the essence of the cosmos open your mind to the Watcher's call." I hesitated, looking from the goblet to Sarah's blank face and back to Elias. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to fight, to do anything but go along with this madness. But a deeper part of me, the part that had been touched by those impossible faces in the clouds, urged me forward. With trembling hands, I took the goblet and raised it to my lips. The liquid was cold and electric on my tongue, seeming to fizz and spark as it went down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a dam breaking, I felt it. A surge of energy unlike anything I had ever experienced coursed through my body. Every nerve ending came alive, every sense heightened to an almost painful degree. The chanting of the cultists swelled, becoming a tangible force that pulsed through the air. And then I saw them. Not just in the clouds or in reflections, but here in the room with us. The faces of the Watchers, vast and ancient and impossibly alien, pressing against the very fabric of reality. I heard their voices, no longer whispers, but a deafening chorus that threatened to shatter my mind. "Open the way, conduit. Let us in." As the energy built to a crescendo, I felt something within me shift, change, expand. The boundaries of my consciousness seemed to dissolve, merging with something vast and unknowable. In that moment, suspended between realities, I understood with perfect clarity the choice that lay before me. I could embrace this role, become the conduit the Watchers sought, and usher in a change that would reshape the very nature of our world. Or I could fight it, cling to my humanity and risk being torn apart by forces beyond my comprehension. As the ritual reached its peak, as the faces of the Watchers loomed ever closer, I made my decision. And in doing so, I set in motion events that would echo across realities for better or for worse. The steady beep of a heart monitor was the first thing I became aware of. My eyelids felt heavy, resistant to opening. When I finally managed to pry them apart, I was greeted by the harsh fluorescent glare of a hospital room. "Ah, he's awake," a voice said from somewhere to my left. "Mr. Walker, can you hear me?" I turned my head, wincing at the stiffness in my neck. A man in a white coat stood beside my bed, clipboard in hand and a practiced smile on his face. "Whoa, where am I?" I croaked, my voice raw from disuse. "You're in St. Mary's Hospital," the doctor replied. "I'm Dr. Reeves. You've been in a coma for several weeks, Mr. Walker. It's good to see you finally coming around." Weeks? That couldn't be right. I had just been... where? Memories swirled in my mind, fragmented and disjointed. Faces in the clouds, a psychic's terrified eyes, robed figures bowing before me, Sarah's blank stare. "No," I mumbled, trying to sit up. "No, that's not possible. I was just..." Dr. Reeves placed a gentle but firm hand on my shoulder, easing me back down. "It's all right, Mr. Walker. Confusion is normal after what you've been through. You were brought in nearly a month ago, suffering from severe dehydration and what appeared to be some kind of psychotic break. We've had you sedated while your body recovered." I shook my head, fighting against the fog in my mind. "You don't understand. There were things happening. The sky, the Watchers." The doctor's smile faltered for just a moment. "I see. Well, it's not uncommon for coma patients to experience vivid dreams or hallucinations. I assure you, Mr. Walker, you're safe now. Everything you think you experienced was just a product of your mind trying to make sense of your unconscious state." As he spoke, I noticed something odd about Dr. Reeves's face. At first, I thought it was just my vision still adjusting. But no, there was definitely something wrong. His features seemed to be shifting, almost melting. "Your face," I gasped, shrinking back against the pillows. "What's happening to your face?" Dr. Reeves frowned, reaching up to touch his cheek. My face? I'm not sure what you mean, Mr. Walker. Perhaps we should run some additional tests to check your vision. But even as he spoke, the transformation accelerated. His skin seemed to liquefy, dripping away like wax from a burning candle. And underneath, where bone and muscle should have been, I saw only swirling, cloudy masses. No, I whispered, horror rising in my throat. No, no. This isn't real. This can't be real. The thing that had been Dr. Reeves tilted its head, its voice distorting into something inhuman. Oh, but it is real, awakened one. More real than you can possibly imagine. I didn't think. I acted. Tearing the IV from my arm, I leapt from the bed, nearly collapsing as my weakened legs struggled to support me. The creature that had been Dr. Reeves reached for me, its arms elongating impossibly. You cannot run from your destiny, it intoned, its voice echoing as if from a great distance. I stumbled out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. The hospital corridor was eerily empty, the usual bustle of nurses and patients conspicuously absent. As I ran, I caught glimpses of movement in the rooms I passed. More melting faces, more cloudy forms emerging from human shells. I burst through the emergency exit, setting off alarms that seemed muffled and far away. The parking lot was chaos. Cars were abandoned haphazardly, some still running. Others smashed into each other or overturned. And everywhere people were screaming. It took me a moment to realize they weren't screaming at the chaos on the ground. They were screaming at the sky. I looked up and felt my knees go weak. The faces were there, vast and undeniable. No longer confined to subtle patterns in the clouds, they now dominated the heavens. Enormous eyes peered down at the city, their gaze almost tangible in its intensity. Mouths large enough to swallow skyscrapers whole opened and closed, speaking words that shook the very air. Jesus Christ, I breathed, unable to tear my eyes away from the cosmic horror above. All around me, people were reacting with varying degrees of panic and awe. Some fell to their knees, praying to whatever gods they believed in. Others ran aimlessly, as if they could somehow escape the gaze of the entities in the sky. A few stood stock still, their faces blank, their eyes reflecting the swirling patterns of the clouds above. I started moving, though I had no clear destination in mind. The city I had known was gone, transformed into a landscape of surreal terror. Buildings seemed to warp and twist, their architecture defying physics as reality itself began to unravel. As I turned a corner, narrowly avoiding a group of people engaged in what looked like some kind of frenzied ritual, a hand grabbed my arm. I spun, ready to fight, only to find myself face to face with a man who seemed jarringly normal. He was middle-aged, with graying hair and intense green eyes. His suit was rumpled, but still somehow gave off an air of authority. "Jack Walker?" he asked, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding us. I nodded, wary but desperate for any semblance of normalcy. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" The man glanced up at the sky, his expression grim. "My name is Dr. Evelyn. I've been looking for you, Mr. Walker. I believe you're the key to stopping all of this." I barked out a laugh that bordered on hysteric. "Stopping this? Are you insane? Look around. The world is literally coming apart at the seams. How could anyone stop this?" Dr. Evelyn's grip on my arm tightened. "I know it seems impossible, but I've been studying this phenomenon for years. The entities you see up there, the Watchers, as some call them, they're not gods. They're interdimensional beings, and they're using our reality as a bridgehead for invasion." My mind reeled, trying to process this information. But why me? Why do you think I can do anything about this?" "Because you're the conduit they've chosen," Dr. Evelyn said, his eyes boring into mine. "The ritual you underwent with the cult of the sky, yes, I know about that. It wasn't just to open your mind to the Watchers. It was to prepare you as a vessel, a focal point for their entry into our world." Memories of the ritual flooded back, the strange liquid, the chanting, the overwhelming sense of cosmic awareness. "So, what? I'm responsible for all this?" Dr. Evelyn shook his head. Not responsible, no. But you are connected to it. And that connection, it works both ways. If we can reverse the process, use your link to the Watchers to close the breach instead of widening it. He trailed off as a deafening roar filled the air. We both looked up to see one of the faces in the sky open its mouth impossibly wide. A vortex of clouds formed, and from it emerged something, a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes, descending towards the city. We're running out of time, Dr. Evelyn said urgently. Will you come with me? Will you help me try to stop this? I stared at him, then back at the horrific scene unfolding above us. Part of me wanted to run, to hide, to wake up from this nightmare. But a deeper part, the part that had been changed by my experiences, knew that running was futile. I don't know if I can do what you're asking, I said, my voice shaking. But I'll try. God help me, I'll try. Dr. Evelyn nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That's all I ask. Come on. We need to get to my lab. I have equipment there that might help us understand your connection to the Watchers. As we began to move through the chaotic streets, dodging panicked crowds and avoiding areas where reality seemed to be breaking down entirely, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, not just by the vast faces in the sky, but by something closer, something that had plans of its own. The world was unraveling around us, and I was somehow at the center of it all. Whether I would be the savior Dr. Evelyn hoped for, or the harbinger of Earth's doom remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same. The city streets had become a labyrinth of chaos and terror. Dr. Evelyn and I weaved through panicked crowds, dodging overturned vehicles and debris that seemed to fall from the twisting sky above. The faces of the Watchers loomed ever larger, their impossibly vast eyes tracking our every move. This way, Dr. Evelyn shouted over the cacophony of screams and unearthly rumbles. He pulled me down a narrow alley away from the main thoroughfare where reality itself seemed to be fraying at the edges. As we ran, he began to explain, his words coming in breathless bursts. I've been studying interdimensional phenomena for years. At first it was just theoretical, quantum entanglement, parallel universes, that sort of thing. But then I started noticing anomalies. We emerged from the alley onto a quieter street. The buildings here seemed more stable, though the air shimmered with an unnatural haze. Doctor, Evelyn pointed to a nondescript office building ahead. My lab, he panted. We should be safe there, at least for a while. As we approached the entrance, a sudden gust of wind nearly knocked us off our feet. But this was no ordinary wind. It was laced with whispers, fragments of alien thoughts that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. What was that? I gasped, steadying myself against the building's wall. Dr. Evelyn's face was grim. Atmospheric disturbance. The barrier between our dimension and theirs is weakening. We're running out of time. We hurried inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time to the 5th floor. Dr. Evelyn's lab was a cluttered space filled with whiteboards covered in complex equations and strange humming machines. As he locked the door behind us, I turned to him. All right, Dr. Evelyn. You said you know what those things are. Start talking. He nodded, moving to a large monitor displaying a swirling vortex of data. The entities we're seeing, the faces in the sky, the beings emerging from the portals, they're not gods or aliens in the traditional sense. They're interdimensional beings, existing in a reality adjacent to our own. But why are they here? I asked, my mind reeling. What do they want? Dr. Evelyn's expression darkened. To put it simply, they're feeding off our reality. Our dimension is, well, think of it as a rich energy source for them. They've been trying to breach the barrier between our worlds for eons, but it's only now, with the right conditions and the right conduit, he glanced meaningfully at me, that they've managed to break through. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I'm the conduit. because of the ritual with the cult of the sky. Precisely, Dr. Evelyn confirmed. The cult, whether they fully understood it or not, was preparing you as a focal point, a bridge between dimensions. But that connection, that bridge, it can work both ways. He moved to a large device in the center of the room, a tangle of wires and pulsing crystals surrounding a central platform. This is what we've been working on, a way to seal the breach, to sever the connection between our world and theirs. But to do it, we need you, Jack. Your unique link to the Watchers could be the key to shutting them out for good. As Dr. Evelyn began preparing the device, explaining the process in a flurry of technical terms I could barely follow, a commotion from outside caught our attention. Shouts and the sound of running feet echoed from the hallway. "No," Dr. Evelyn whispered, his face paling. "They've found us." Before I could ask who they were, the door burst open. Robed figures poured into the lab, their faces hidden beneath deep hoods, and leading them. "Sarah," I breathed, my heart clenching. But it wasn't really Sarah, not anymore. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and her movements were fluid, almost inhuman. When she spoke, her voice resonated with a power that made the air vibrate. "The awakened one," she intoned, her gaze fixed on me. "You must fulfill your destiny. The way must be opened fully." Dr. Evelyn stepped in front of me, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "You don't understand what you're doing. If the breach isn't closed, there won't be a world left for anyone to rule or transform. You'll be destroying everything." Sarah, or the thing wearing Sarah's face, tilted her head, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Destruction and creation are one and the same in the eyes of the Watchers. What you call an end, we see as a glorious new beginning." The cultists surged forward. Dr. Evelyn and I found ourselves backed against the device, desperately trying to keep them at bay. In the struggle, someone, I couldn't see who, knocked against the central console. Sparks flew, and a high-pitched whine filled the air. "No!" Dr. Evelyn cried out. "The containment field is destabilizing." The air in the center of the platform began to ripple and tear, a swirling vortex of energy forming. It pulsed with otherworldly colors growing larger by the second. In the chaos, I saw Sarah approach, her hand outstretched. "Come, awakened one. Embrace your true purpose." But as I recoiled from her touch, I stumbled, knocking into Dr. Evelyn. He lost his balance, teetering on the edge of the platform. Our eyes met for a brief, horrified moment before the vortex seemed to reach out, tendrils of energy wrapping around him. "Jack," he shouted, his voice already sounding distant. "You have to close the breach. It's the only way to—" His words were cut off as the portal pulled him in, collapsing in on itself with a thunderous boom that shook the entire building. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of damaged equipment and the distant sounds of a world coming apart outside. I stared at the space where Dr. Evelyn had vanished, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. The cultists, too, seemed stunned, their earlier fervor replaced by uncertainty. Sarah's voice, when she spoke again, had lost some of its otherworldly resonance. She sounded almost confused. This is not what was foretold. The merging was to be glorious, not this chaos." I turned to her, anger and desperation warring within me. "Look around you. Look at what your glorious merging is doing to our world. Dr. Evelyn was right. If we don't find a way to close the breach, there won't be anything left." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the real Sarah in her eyes, a hint of doubt. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold determination of the Watcher's puppet. "The way forward is clear," she said, her voice hardening. "The breach must be widened, the Watchers fully manifested. Only then can the true transformation begin." As she spoke, the building shook again, more violently this time. Through the lab's windows, I could see new tiers forming in the sky, eldritch horrors beginning to push through into our reality. I looked from Sarah to the damaged device, my mind racing. Dr. Evelyn had said I was the key, that my connection to the Watchers could be used to seal the breach. But how? I had no idea how to operate the complex machinery, and even if I did, it was badly damaged in the fight. As the cultists began to regroup, clearly intending to take me by force if necessary, I realized I was out of time. I had to make a choice: give in to what Sarah and the cult wanted, or find some way to stop this invasion before it was too late. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and I, Jack Walker, reluctant conduit, unwitting catalyst, was the only one who could tip the scales. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for what came next, knowing that whatever I chose would change everything, for better or for worse. The lab erupted into chaos as I made my desperate move. Grabbing the damaged device, a tangle of wires, crystals, and hope, I bolted for the door. The cultists, momentarily stunned by my sudden action, scrambled to intercept me. "Stop him!" Sarah's voice rang out, a command that seemed to vibrate in the very air. I ducked under grasping hands, my heart pounding in my chest. The device was heavier than I expected, awkward to carry as I ran, but I couldn't let it go. It was the only chance we had. Bursting into the hallway, I could hear the cultists right behind me. Their chanting filled the air, words in a language that hurt my ears and made my vision swim. I shook my head, fighting to stay focused. The elevator was out of the question. Too slow, too easy to trap. I hit the stairwell at full speed, taking the steps 2 at a time. The device clanged against the railing, sparks flying from exposed wires. I prayed it would still work if I got the chance to use it. "Jack," Sarah's voice echoed in the stairwell. "You can't run from this. The ascension is coming whether you embrace it or not." I didn't waste breath responding. Every step was a battle now, my legs burning, lungs screaming for air. But I couldn't stop. The fate of the world literally rested in my arms. Bursting out onto the street, I was hit by a wave of cold alien air. The sky had darkened, but not with natural night. The faces of the watchers loomed larger than ever, their cloudy forms beginning to take on more solid shape. Tendrils of mist reached down, probing the city like curious fingers. People ran screaming through the streets. Cars lay abandoned, some still running, others crumpled like discarded toys. And everywhere, reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. Buildings warped and twisted, their architecture defying physics. Patches of sidewalk rippled like water, while others crumbled into swirling vortexes of color and light. I ran, my mind racing faster than my feet. Where could I go? How could I possibly hope to activate the device and close the breach? Dr. Evelyn had said I was the key, but he hadn't had time to explain how. A memory flashed. The cultists, gathering on the roof of the tallest building in the city for their rituals. If they believed height brought them closer to the Watchers, maybe that's where I needed to be to shut them out. Decision made, I changed course. The apex tower loomed ahead, its spire piercing the roiling sky. It was at least a mile away, through streets choked with panic and otherworldly horrors. But I had no choice. There! A cultist's shout cut through the cacophony. The awakened one flees. After him. I risked a glance back. A sea of robed figures poured from the lab building, Sarah at their head. But something was wrong. Her form seemed to flicker and shift, one moment solid, the next partially translucent. As I watched in horror, wisps of cloud began to merge with her body. Turning away, I pushed myself harder. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed in protest. The device grew heavier with each step, but I clutched it tighter. It was the world's only hope. The streets became a nightmarish obstacle course. Fissures opened in the pavement, spewing forth impossible geometries and creatures that defied description. The air itself thickened, making each breath a struggle. "Jack!" Sarah's voice, now layered with inhuman tones, called out. "Why do you resist? Can't you see the beauty of what's happening?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Every ounce of energy was focused on reaching the tower, on staying ahead of the cultists and the encroaching madness. Finally, mercifully, I reached the base of the apex tower. The lobby was deserted, the security gates hanging open. I stumbled inside, making for the elevators. To my surprise, they were still operational. As the doors slid closed, I caught a glimpse of Sarah and the cultists rounding the corner outside. The elevator's ascent seemed to take an eternity. I slumped against the wall, gasping for breath, the device cradled in my arms. Through the glass walls, I watched the city fall further into chaos. The watchers' faces loomed ever closer, their features becoming more defined, more terrifyingly alien. With a soft chime, the elevator reached the top floor. I staggered out, making for the maintenance access that would lead to the roof. The lock was no match for my desperation, and soon I emerged onto the tower's summit. The wind howled, thick with alien whispers and the screams of a dying reality. I set the device down, my hands shaking as I tried to remember everything Dr. Evelyn had said about its operation. Wires had come loose in the escape, crystals cracked and dim, but it had to work. It was our only chance.